Last year on Father's Day began like any other. I'd be up early, waiting for my wife and teenage daughters to join me. On Mother's Day, I'd treat my wife to mimosas for breakfast, a fancy cheese plate for lunch, and her favorite steak dinner. As the girls grew older, I handled the pampering solo. On Father's Day, my wife usually cooked me a special breakfast, though last year was different. I waited until she woke to eat, starving by then. When she finally did, she greeted me with a kiss and got to work on a family breakfast. We later enjoyed lunch at a quirky cafe with Doctor Who-themed sandwiches. My wife, a calendar devotee, orchestrates our life with precision, managing holidays and kids' activities with ease. All events, from holidays to birthdays, are marked on our calendar, rarely overlooked except by me. When my wife noticed my birthday coincided with Father's Day, I wasn't surprised. She joked about double gifts, promising something special. I kissed her cheek, hoping for more than the usual. She usually teased with head employments during foreplay, but on my birthday and Father's Day, they were special treats, given without expectation of return. I wasn't clueless. I was excited, thinking I might get a rare treat on my upcoming birthday. But as the weeks passed, things felt off. My wife, usually steady, started acting strange, working late, dressing up more for her job at the bakery, even wearing makeup. Doubts crept in when she went out alone on a Friday, which was unusual for us. We were a tight-knit couple, preferring each other's company. Our marriage felt solid. We weren't big on going out. Our ideal night was lounging at home, so seeing her dolled up that Friday was unexpected. She wore a new skirt, tan stockings, and heels, looking like she'd been to the salon. I whistled, thinking we had plans, but she explained she was going out with coworkers. Shocked, I asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier. She seemed uneasy, but apologized, claiming she'd just been asked. I eyed her outfit, questioning how she managed all that in an hour at work. I grew increasingly frustrated, sensing her dishonesty, yet unable to confront her. Her infidelity seemed unfathomable. She embodied the typical suburban wife and mother. Our bed life remained vibrant, adding to my confusion. When she brushed off my suspicions, claiming she worked half a day and wanted to look nice, I was left speechless as she hurried out the door. She returned near midnight, her hair hastily tied up, dispelling any notion of a salon visit. Ignoring me, she headed straight for the shower, leaving me bewildered. Something was amiss in our seemingly perfect life, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending trouble, especially considering my line of work in retail. On Saturday morning, as I prepared for work, my wife didn't wake to bid me farewell as she usually did. I found it surprising. At the store, I encountered Missy, the morning barista, waiting at the entrance. With her striking blue eyes and red hair, she caught my attention, despite my contented marriage. Redheads had always intrigued me. "Hey, Bill," she called out as I approached the entrance, still locked, as it was half an hour before opening. Missy had mentioned feeling uncomfortable with the night crew. "Good morning, Missy," I greeted, unlocking the doors. "What's up, Bill? You look down," she observed. "Just a lot on my mind today," I admitted. She gave me a curious look, but didn't pry. "Give me a sec. I'll get you some of our best coffee," she offered. Forced to smile, I replied, "Sounds good. I'll join you soon." I secured the doors while she hastened to ready the cafe for the busy morning ahead. Knowing how bustling our little cafe became once the store opened, I made my rounds on the floor, checking in on the department crews. While my competent department managers made these checks unnecessary, I valued the chance to greet and chat with my team. Maintaining positive relationships with them mattered to me, and I believe they appreciated the effort. My final stop was at the coffee shop, where Missy had my usual large black coffee ready and waiting. "Here's your cup of Megamart's finest brew," Missy said, handing it over. "Thanks, Missy," I replied, pushing $2 across the counter. "No need for payment today, boss," she insisted. "Can't take any chances, Missy. I cover all my expenses here. Last thing I need is someone causing trouble with corporate," I explained. She gasped. "Bill, I'd never do that." "Not saying you would, Missy, but I can't risk it, even for a $2 coffee. You'd be surprised what I have to deal with. Denying someone a day off or cutting overtime, it's just not worth it," I explained. "All right, boss, understood." She nodded. I waved farewell and took a sip from my mug, aware that some employees likely received free coffee occasionally, though it was impossible to track. And it wasn't worth the hassle of monitoring video footage just to ensure everyone paid. As the company's leader, I faced risks, dealing with employee frustrations over trivial matters like parking regulations, prompting unnecessary HR calls. The day passed quietly, with the highlight being an old lady stealing cat and bird food. It provided the distraction I needed, keeping me occupied without dwelling on my marital issues. Upon returning home, I found my wife and daughters heading out to a concert with other families. While it had been planned and noted on the calendar, I had forgotten. I hoped to speak with Katie later, eager to resolve our recent tensions. Not knowing what had transpired the previous night nagged at me, leaving me with little else to dwell on. Tonight, I seized the chance to snoop around. I checked her email, expecting it to be fruitless, but surprisingly, no one else had sent messages. Since she had a cell phone, I couldn't check her texts or call log. Checking her clothes for clues was also futile, as she'd already done her Saturday laundry. Frustrated, I achieved nothing and went to bed after the movie feeling just as unsettled. On my birthday and Father's Day, I began my day as usual, toast, coffee, and enjoying the morning on the terrace. It was beautiful, with birds chirping, and I pondered what the day held in store. Around 9, I returned inside to refill my coffee and found my wife and daughters up and packing lunch. Surprised by their early activity, I questioned their plans. Jill announced a beach trip, catching me off guard. As they departed, I realized they remembered my birthday, unlike how I often had to remind them of important dates. Perplexed by Katie's oversight, I received a call from my mom, hoping it was them coming back, but it wasn't. "Hey, Billy, happy birthday and Father's Day," Mom greeted. "Thanks, Mom. Kathy's got some big plans for you guys today," I replied. "Nope, she took the girls to the beach just a bit ago," she informed me. "Really? That's not like her. I'd have thought she'd whip up a tasty breakfast and make today special for you," I commented. "Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure what's up lately. She's been acting strange for weeks now," Mom shared. "Well, don't sweat it. She probably has something special lined up for later. I've got to head to church." "Love you, Billy," Mom assured me. "Love you, Mom." Mom's eternal optimism and her close relationship with Kathy always warmed my heart, especially since Dad passed away a few years ago. I stood there, pondering the state of my marriage, when the phone rang once more. It was my assistant, Anne. "Bill, there was an incident at the coffee shop this morning." "What happened? Was Missy involved?" "Unfortunately, yes. She was on the stairs when a customer shoved her. She lost her balance and took a fall." "Oh my goodness. Is she all right?" "They've taken her to St. Alex's Hospital for x-rays. It looks like she might have a broken arm or something." "Poor girl. Do you need me to cover her shift?" "No, everything's sorted. I just wanted to give you a heads up for tomorrow. I apologize for reaching out on Father's Day." "Don't worry about it, Anne. Thanks for letting me know." I hoped Missy was all right, but assuming they wouldn't return, I went to IHOP for breakfast. The bustling atmosphere, filled with happy families celebrating fathers, overwhelmed me, and I left to avoid breaking down. Opting for McDonald's, I enjoyed a satisfying breakfast with coffee and orange juice. Sitting in the park, I reminisced about boating trips with my daughters when they were young, realizing they had grown distant as they neared college. Their outings with their mother became more frequent, perhaps for the best. I acknowledged there would likely be no dinner together as the day wore on, so I grabbed a Reuben at the doctor-themed cafe. A Facebook post garnered the usual Father's Day wishes, but my mother-in-law's comment about the beach trip surprised me, as my wife had been posting beach photos. Feeling down, I sought solace in a sports bar, but soon retreated to a cigar lounge, indulging in a pricey Opus X. Settling in to watch the game, I was invited to join a group playing cards. "I'm Bill," I introduced myself to the older gentleman. "I'm Lance, and this is my brother Jerry. Pleasure to meet you both." They finished their handshake and included me in their little 5-card game. "Grab yourself a drink, Bill," Lance offered, placing the cooler on the floor. I expressed gratitude and opted for a Miller Lite. "No kids, or did the ex take them with a new guy?" Jerry quipped with a smirk. I frowned and replied, "My wife and the girls are at the beach. Seems like they've lost track of the day." "Tough break," Lance chimed in. "I hardly see my boys. They're both in the service." Jerry nodded, adding, "My daughter's out in California. My grandson Charlie just turned 2. I'm heading there next week." "That sounds wonderful," I said. As my daughters hit 17 and 18, I began longing for the days of them being little. They nodded in agreement. Eventually, the conversation circled back to my wife. "Do you think she genuinely forgot, or is she avoiding you?" Jerry asked, echoing my own thoughts. Recounting the recent weeks and Friday's issues, they shook their heads in disbelief. "She's cheating on you," Lance asserted, with Jerry nodding in agreement. "I can't believe it," I muttered. grappling with the revelation, though deep down I knew it made sense. "Listen, Bill," Lance began, recounting his own experience. "I've been down this road. The sudden changes in behavior. The late nights out, dressed provocatively. The lack of respect. Been there, buddy." Lance shared how he regretted his initial reaction of divorcing his unfaithful wife, highlighting the financial and emotional toll it took. "Bill, trust me," he continued, urging me to consider forgiveness if I truly loved her. "It'll be better for you in the long run. Guys in their 40s don't often get second chances at love. Thank you, Lance. You've given me a lot to think about." I might have said it aloud, but deep down, I thought he was crazy. Forgiving her for cheating and staying married seemed impossible. I shook both men's hands, bid them farewell, and left. As I scrolled through Facebook on the couch, dinner time approached. Seeing my daughters and wife's posts filled with pictures of their joyful day saddened me further. Enough of this, I thought. It was time to face reality. My wife had forgotten my birthday and Father's Day. What did it matter? What counted was my certainty that she had cheated, especially after Friday night's strange behavior. Her goal seemed to be rubbing it in my face, and now she had succeeded. Determined to move forward, I prepared for the evening. I decided to treat myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant, even if it meant a long wait. After a shower and donning my sport coat and slacks, I headed out for steak. Sitting at the bar, awaiting a table, an older man took the seat beside me. Observing my solitary champagne bottle, he frowned but refrained from comment, opting for a martini. As the bartender filled my glass, he couldn't resist asking if I was celebrating alone or taking someone else's place. I assured him it was just me. He nodded and took a sip, revealing he was awaiting his family, 3 generations strong despite his daughter breaking her arm earlier. He chuckled, noting the unexpected nature of grown children breaking bones. I nodded in agreement. "Looks like I'll be cooking solo for a while. My wife needs to focus on taking care of Missy and Mia and leave me be." Suddenly, a little girl called out, "Grandpa!" and dashed across the crowded bar, showering the man with affectionate hugs and kisses. Then I heard my name. Missy and her mother approached me. The resemblance between them was striking. "Hey, Missy, how's your arm?" I inquired. "Not bad. The painkillers are doing their job. But it was rough when they said it," she replied. Missy introduced me to her parents, Jack and Mary, and their adorable daughter, Mia. "Where's your wife, Bill?" Mary asked. "I'm not sure. She took the girls to the beach this morning, and I haven't heard from them all day." "On Father's Day? And it's your birthday, too?" Mary exclaimed. "That's terrible. What's going on with her?" Not wanting to delve into it, I shrugged. "Forget about her, you're joining us," Mary insisted. I grasped Jack's reference to his red rage. "You don't want them to gang up on you, Bill," he chuckled, a testament to his experience dealing with familial conflicts. "But it's your day, Jack. I don't want to intrude," I replied. "Nonsense," he retorted. "This is our day, Bill. Grandpa, remember?" As their table's buzzer sounded, he tossed a $20 bill and left, insisting I meet him at our table. "Sorry about that, Bill. My parents can be stubborn," Missy apologized. "Don't worry, Missy. Eating alone would be worse," I assured her. Dinner conversation remained light, filled with anecdotes about our daughters. Mia giggled at stories of her mom's childhood antics. Later, my phone rang, but I ignored it, placing it on the table. "Your wife?" Mary inquired. "Yes, it's complicated," I admitted. "Maybe you can find a way to forgive her," Mary suggested, glancing at Jack. I signaled for the check, expressing gratitude for the meal and treating them. As I signed the check, I pondered the advice I'd received, despite lacking solid evidence of her infidelity. Ignoring the persistent ringing of my phone, I couldn't help but wonder what was wrong with people. As I pulled into the garage, my daughters greeted me with kisses and hugs, apologizing for forgetting Father's Day. "Girls, it's okay. I don't expect you to remember my birthday," I reassured them. Suddenly, Jill exclaimed, "Wait, it's your birthday today." She rushed inside, yelling at my wife. "Daddy, we didn't know. We're so sorry. You must hate us," Jill lamented. "No, sweetheart, I love you more than anything. We decided last night to go to the beach today, and we didn't realize it was your birthday." "It's okay. Don't worry. I'm not upset with you," I comforted her. Though I didn't express my anger toward her mother, it was my issue, not my daughter's. Ignoring the chaos in the kitchen, I changed upstairs and returned to find my wife sobbing alone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I shook my head and retreated to the deck with a beer and cigar. Enjoying the serene evening, my wife interrupted me. Bill, What's his name? I interjected, my anger rising. She didn't respond, and I realized I was headed for divorce. What a mistake marrying her had been after nearly 20 years. At this point, I began fearing the worst. How long had she been unfaithful? Was he her first? Did I even know him? Were these girls truly mine? It's astonishing the negative thoughts that invade your mind when you're mistreated. I decided to request a paternity test for the girls as part of the divorce, not only for my peace of mind, but also to embarrass Katie. I spent the night researching divorce laws online before falling asleep on the couch. How I spent my birthday. Waking at 5 a.m, I found Katie peacefully asleep in my bedroom, her undressed body curled around her pillow. Despite my restless night, she looked serene. Sadly, she was no longer mine, but I couldn't help admiring her beauty. After a quick shower, I left without waking her, only to be met by Jill in the hallway. "How bad is it, Dad?" she asked. "As bad as it can get," I sighed. "Can you forgive her? It's just one day's mistake," she pleaded. "Honey, it's more than forgetting my birthday or Father's Day." "She cheated on me," I explained. "No, Dad, she wouldn't do that. Something must have pushed her, but I won't accept it. Think about it. She's been acting strange for weeks. Friday night, after getting all done up, she went out dressed provocatively." "That wasn't for you," Jill reasoned. "She avoided me all weekend. Clearly, she felt guilty or resentful toward me and didn't want to be around me at all." "When has she ever taken you to the beach without me? It's always a family outing. What if it's not an affair? What if it was just a one-time thing? Can't you forgive her for once?" Jill pleaded. "I doubt that's the case, honey. But look at her actions this weekend. Has she shown love toward me?" I questioned. "Daddy, you didn't see her face when Grandma called to ask why she didn't wish Grandpa a happy Father's Day. She dropped the phone and yelled no so loudly we thought Grandpa was having a heart attack," Jill recounted. "He's fine, Dad. Mom sobbed on her knees until we helped her up and sat her on the couch. She kept repeating that she loves you. Honestly, Jenny wanted to call an ambulance for her. We calmed her down and convinced her to call you," Jill continued. "I don't know what to say, Jill. She doesn't love me. You can't cheat on your spouse and claim to love them. That's not love, it's selfishness. Love should be selfless. When she was with another man, she abandoned me," I concluded. She hugged me tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can't imagine it was just some random guy she met at a bar. There must have been flirting, or her accepting his advances. Pleasure touches, maybe even kissing and caressing, all leading up to her being with him. It's a betrayal to your spouse. To show carnal affection to someone else when you're in love, please don't divorce her. I have to head to work now. We'll talk more later," she said, walking into Jenny's room. I promised to discuss our conversation with Jenny. No more secrets in our family. I wondered how long we'd remain a family. Despite Kathy's likely busy schedule, I felt calm throughout the day. The only unusual thing was dealing with the paperwork related to Missy's accident. I ensured she'd be compensated for her vacation and helped her fill out the accident report, knowing she wasn't good with her left hand. She signed it, and I felt a pang of concern for her well-being. "How's home?" she asked. "Not good," I replied. She didn't deny the affair when I confronted her. "Damn, Bill," she said sympathetically. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "You probably don't want to hear my story, but I get it. My ex cheated on me when I was pregnant. I kicked him out before our daughter was born. My mom wasn't pleased. She basically called me disposable." "Wow." "I found it strange when your mom mentioned forgiving my wife last night." "She was looking right at your dad," she revealed. "Yeah, I noticed. I'm not sure who, but it makes me think one of them was cheating." "I'm sorry," she offered. "No need. If they're happy deceiving each other, let them. I'd rather not trust a liar," I stated firmly. Kathy wasn't home when I returned from work. She was probably with her lover, and I was furious. I drove to her grocery store, spotted her car, and was surprised to find her with a young man. She noticed me and seemed to yell no as I approached, but I left before she could say anything. If she was cheating, he could have her. I drove home, packed my bags, and decided to stay in a hotel until I found an apartment. Jenny and Jill begged me to stay, but I explained that I caught their mom almost cheating with a man in her car after work. "Dad, there must be a mistake," Jenny pleaded. "I saw what I saw. There's no innocent explanation for her being in the back parking lot with a man in her car," I insisted. "Please don't break up our family," Jenny sobbed. "Your mom did that, not me. I love you girls. I'll keep in touch every day," I reassured them before leaving them in tears and heading to the garage. As I drove out of the garage, Katie nearly hit me as she sped away. The following week was utter torment. I ignored all of my wife's calls, and she bombarded me with messages every hour. likely taking a week off work to do so. Despite pleas from my family and Kathy's sister, none would confirm her infidelity when I asked. Frustrated, I stopped taking their calls, insisting that my daughters avoid mentioning their mother. Eventually, I met with a lawyer and proposed splitting the house equally, even though I could have claimed a larger share due to my larger contributions. Surprisingly, I learned I didn't have to pay alimony since Kathy could support herself. The downside was lacking concrete proof of her affair, which could weaken my case in court. Nonetheless, I was willing to take my chances. My lawyer geared up for divorce proceedings and life carried on. There'd be no forced mediation or lengthy legal battles. The split was fair, obvious to any judge, but nothing was smooth sailing. When served the papers, she rallied her family against me again. Supposedly, she only cheated once on that Friday before my birthday. Yet her relatives made me out to be the villain for not hearing her out. It was surreal. Even my daughters resisted until I fibbed about a court order for a DNA test. Kathy's letter arrived, admitting to a fling with a 21-year-old, which spared me the need to prove infidelity for the divorce. Finally, karma favored me. She resisted the divorce at first, but the judge approved it when he saw the terms I proposed and her admission of infidelity in the letter. I was to be divorced in 60 days, finding myself isolated for refusing to talk to her. I was labeled immature and a prick. Even my mother and daughters stopped talking to me. It hurt, but I stood by my principles. I called my daughters every day, leaving messages despite their silence. I refused to let them blame me for the lack of communication, making every effort to stay in touch. One change was having coffee with Missy on Sundays. We met at a local coffee shop, where she and Mia lived nearby. I confided in her about my struggles while Mia watched cartoons. "Your daughters will come around, Bill," she reassured. "Living with your wife. Who knows what she's put in their heads?" I hope so. I just missed them terribly. The following week, I returned to the same store at the usual time and was engrossed in reading when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hey, stranger." I smiled and welcomed them to join me again. "Are you stalking me, or is this your usual routine?" she joked. "No, I live nearby and I enjoy having coffee and reading on Sunday mornings. It gets a bit lonely at home," I explained. We chatted about the neighborhood until we parted ways. Meeting every Sunday wasn't planned, but it became a habit. I found her company enjoyable, and little Mia was a delight. On the day the divorce was finalized, I knocked on the front door of my former house. My wife answered, tears evident. Without a word, she invited me in. "Are the girls home?" I inquired. "They're at a school musical. I knew you'd come tonight," she admitted. "So you waited until it was too late to stop it, didn't you?" I smirked. "Yes," she admitted. "I knew you'd try to beg and plead, but I couldn't let that happen. You broke my heart, and there's no forgiveness for that." "It was one mistake, Bill. Why couldn't you forgive me?" she pleaded. "Did you love me when you were with that guy? Did you love me when you ignored me on my birthday?" I countered. "If that's your version of love, then it's beyond repair." "I never wanted this to happen," she sobbed. "And I never wanted a cheating wife," I retorted. "But here we are." She tried to speak, but I interrupted. "Katie, you not only broke my heart, but you turned my own mother and daughters against me. I'll never forgive you for that." "You acted irrationally," she countered. "If you don't make things right with my family, I'll expose your infidelity to every man you date. I don't need anyone else." Wrong answer. "Then I'll find other ways to hurt and embarrass you," she threatened. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my arm. "It's not my fault," she pleaded. "Oh, really? Did I cheat on you?" I shot back. "You've normalized cheating to our daughters. They'll think it's okay because you've convinced them it was a one-time mistake." "Well, I won't go down because of some idiot who made you feel hot." I freed my hand from hers. "Rot in hell for ending our marriage over a fling," I spat, leaving her in tears, unaffected by her distress. A few weeks later, Missy knocked on my office door. "Got a second, Bill?" "Sure, come on in," I replied, though I frowned, anticipating bad news. "Bill, does the company have rules about dating coworkers?" I disliked this question, hoping to ask her out myself, but it seemed I was too late. "No, we have strict intimidation policies. It protects against potential issues arising from workplace relationships," I explained. "Good, that's what I hoped for," she said, leaving her contact details on my desk. "My address and phone number. Let's have dinner tomorrow night. Mia will join us." I smiled and agreed, feeling grateful for the chance at happiness. "Hey, it's Dad. Hope you and your sister are doing well. Nothing new here except a coworker asked me out. Anyway, love you and miss you. Call soon. Bye." I knew this message might stir up trouble, but I didn't mind. I needed to move forward, and I was glad Missy had taken the lead. She was not only beautiful, but also had a wonderful character. Her daughter was delightful, and I had already met her parents. I felt like things were finally looking up. Just 15 minutes later, Katie texted me, calling me a fool for already dating. I chuckled at her delusion. I had no intention of mourning the end of my marriage to a cheating wife. At 41, I felt young enough to find love again, even consider having more kids. Missy, in her 30s, might share that desire. It was early to think about such things, but as a single mom, it might be a priority for her. As for me, I hadn't been carnal in months. The next evening after work, I showered, shaved, and dressed casually. Glancing in the mirror, I was satisfied with what I saw. I was in good shape, no extra weight, and my brown hair showed no signs of gray. With a well-paying job and savings, I considered myself a catch, especially for someone like Missy. Yet I realized I had no clue how to navigate the dating scene. Marriage provided comfort and familiarity, from holding hands to intimacy. Dating was uncharted territory. Oh my God. I had to relearn everything about lovemaking. With my ex-wife, I knew exactly what pleased her. Now I just hope the next woman enjoys the same things, or at least has a good rapport with her body. I worried I rushed back into dating too soon. Arriving at her house with wine, flowers, and a stuffed animal for Mia, I aimed to win her favor. When Missy opened the door, I was taken aback. Her curly red hair cascaded around her shoulders, complemented by just the right amount of makeup. She wore a breezy sundress, showcasing her beautiful legs. Barefoot, her hot pink toenails matched her fingernails. "Do I pass the test?" she teased. "God, yes," I blurted before I could retract my words. She chuckled, accepting the gifts and ushering me in. With Mia engrossed in TV, I knelt beside her, offering the stuffed bear. Her apprehension turned to delight as she eagerly took it, scampering off to show Missy. Watching Mia, I reminisced about Jenny and Jill at her age, realizing how much I missed them. "What's wrong?" Missy inquired, snapping me from my reverie. Forced smile. "Nothing. Just thinking about my daughters when they were Mia's age." "Is it really that bad?" she inquired. "They still won't talk to me. Kathy's turned them against me, and I can't change their minds, but I'm still trying. I leave them messages every day, and I won't stop." "I'm so sorry, Bill. I know this is awful for you every day, but I know they listen to my messages. I mentioned our date tonight, and Katie texted me, calling me an prick for getting to the point so quickly. Sorry, is that too fast?" She bit her lip, looking cute. "Maybe," I replied honestly, "but I'd be happy to find out with you." She smiled, taking my hand. "Dinner is ready. I hope you like pasta with meat sauce." "Sounds great. Oh, I have garlic bread too. So be ready for us to make out on the couch later." Mia giggled, and I was surprised by Missy's candidness. She sensed my awkwardness and said, "Bill, we're both adults, and I've known you for 3 years. I know what kind of man you are, and it doesn't take much to realize that I really like you. You're going to be a hot commodity soon, and I want to stake my claim early." "Hot stuff?" I quipped. "Yep. You have no idea how much buzz the news of your divorce has caused at the store, honey. Your appearance on the market, so to speak, has caught the attention of many unmarried ladies. You're a handsome man in good shape. You're smart, stable, and we all know how you feel about fidelity." When I sat down at her table, I felt quite good, so I'm getting in line early, she concluded. I grasped her hand. "I like you too." Mia chimed in. "Sketty's my favorite. I like Sketty too." "The fattier, the better," I quipped, eyeing the Parmesan cheese jar. "And you must have really pungent cheese," I added jokingly. She giggled, correcting me. "It's not stinky cheese, it's Parm." "Stinky cheese," I teased, pretending to sniff the jar dramatically. "Wow, this is really stinky cheese," Missy chuckled, shaking her head as Mia poured a generous amount over the spaghetti. During dinner, we chatted lightly. I inquired about Mia's preschool adventures, and she eagerly shared every detail. It was a delightful exchange. I soon noticed Missy's quiet contentment as she observed us. As she began clearing plates, she joked, "She hasn't shared her favorite TV shows yet." After tucking Mia into bed, Missy joined me on the couch. Handing her a glass of wine, she relaxed and remarked, "Being a mom is the highlight of my day. But moments like these are precious." I instinctively embraced her, and she nestled closer. "It's even busier with 2, I admitted. "Do you think your girls will come around?" she asked. "I hope so," I answered, reflecting on their situation. She kissed my cheek and encouraged me not to give up the fight for them. Setting down her glass, Missy leaned back. "Bill, I've made it clear that I really like you. I'm too old to play games." I want to continue seeing you, and that includes inviting you into my life carnally. I started to interject, but she raised a finger. I know you want to be a gentleman, but you don't have to be. I'm not looking for casual flings. I want an exclusive relationship. My daughter needs a father figure, and I need a husband. That's what I'm offering. I attempted to speak again, only to be met with resistance once more. Typically, guys bolt after this conversation. I don't see you as that type, but I'm offering you an out. If you're looking to play the field, I'm not your match. But if you're interested in building something lasting, then I'm here. Impressive, I remarked. Was that rehearsed or spontaneous? She frowned, misunderstanding my reaction. Missy, we've had a professional relationship for 3 years. Our recent coffee meetups have been enjoyable. I'm a family man. I've always been. I don't know how to navigate the single scene, and the idea of dating terrifies me. If my wife hadn't strayed, I'd still be happily married. No, I'm not interested in that lifestyle. She smiled, taking my hand. You're charming, intelligent, and your spaghetti is fantastic. We shared a laugh, and she playfully nudged my shoulder. I'd like you to be my boyfriend. Let's build something meaningful together, including with your daughter. That night, we refrained from intimacy. Despite the temptation, I opted to take things slow, respecting both our feelings. A stroke of luck came my way when I received an application for a managerial position. Though I never learned the name of the individual who contributed to the demise of my marriage, fate intervened when he applied for the night manager role. Recognizing him instantly, I orchestrated his hiring, anticipating the opportunity for payback. On his second night, I left a 40-inch TV in his car, identical to mine, knowing it would likely be out of stock by morning. I arrived as his shift ended, walking him to his car while discussing his team. Upon noticing the TV in his back seat, I feigned surprise. Jeff, did you buy that TV today? We're not open yet. No, Bill, it's not mine. I have no idea how it got there. Let's head back to the store, I suggested, to which he reluctantly agreed. Back at the store, his fear was palpable. With no night security due to our night crew, I easily disabled the security system, covering the camera with tape. When he saw the system malfunctioning, he grew frantic, insisting on his innocence as I contacted the police. Despite hoping for harsher consequences, he received a misdemeanor in community service. The corporation, finally acknowledging security gaps, installed parking lot cameras. He never suspected my involvement and unsuccessfully attempted to blame his team. His termination was swift and unsurprising. One chilly Saturday morning, a week after my dinner with Missy, I found her waiting in the car to keep warm. As I parked next to her, she greeted me with a kiss and confirmed our dinner plans for the night. Absolutely, I replied. Okay, I have something special I'm cooking for us. You won't want to miss it, she added. Before I could respond, Katie's interruption came from behind me. Missy, visibly irritated, addressed her. Katie, what do you want? I asked, growing annoyed. I've been trying to call you. Did you block my number? Yeah, after your 30 messages about how I'm an prick for continuing to live. I'm done. What do you want? We need to talk about the girls in college, Katie insisted. They can go wherever they want. I've handled the finances for them. I'd like to be involved, but thanks to you poisoning them against me, they won't talk to me, I replied. Katie suggested the girls feared I wouldn't pay their tuition. Missy interjected with a laugh. I lost them in the divorce. This retort earned her a glare from Katie, who then blamed me for not forgiving her one slip-up. You cost me my marriage, my family, my daughters, and my mother. You better never date again. If I find out, you'll never see a second date, I warned. Missy's rebuttal was sharp. No one wants to date a cheating strumpet unless they're looking for easy lovemaking. I headed towards the store, but heard shouting behind me. Glancing back, I saw Missy confronting Katie, pinning her against the car. Stay away from my man, Missy yelled, jabbing her finger. I intervened, pulling Missy away. Stop it, Missy, she's not worth it. You heard me, Katie retorted, storming off. Please, Katie, just go. It's over between us, and it's your fault, I said, leaving her sobbing by the car. Catching up to Missy, I took her hand. I'm sorry, Bill. I got too territorial, she admitted. No worries. Parking lot fights are great for the ego, I joked, and we went inside, laughing. Later, my mom called, but the call cut off abruptly. Concerned, I rushed to her house, ignoring Missy's calls. Arriving, I found the ambulance gone. She'd passed away before reaching the hospital. Alone in the ER lobby, I pondered her last words. Then Missy called. Hey, my mom just passed away. Oh, Bill, I'm deeply sorry to hear that. Yes, thank you. I'm worried I won't be much company tonight. No worries, I'll be there for you. You need me. Please let me come over. All right, yes. Expressing my reluctance to be alone, I was grateful she agreed to keep me company. I'm heading home now. I'll meet you there after you finish up. All right, I'll be there soon. After finishing my conversation, I drove to my old house instead of heading home. I felt compelled to speak to my daughters, regardless of their willingness to see me. Arriving, I noticed both of their cars parked in the driveway, feeling a wave of apprehension. Entering through the garage, I was relieved not to find Kathy's car, as I wasn't ready to face her. The downstairs rooms were empty, so I made my way upstairs to the bedrooms. "Daddy!" Jill exclaimed as I entered her room. "What's up?" shouted Jenny, following behind me. "Did you come here to beg? Well, you can leave," Jill retorted. "Grandma had a heart attack and passed away this morning," I interjected. They both gasped. I felt it was important to share this news in person. "Now I feel like I've damned myself," I added. I exited and shut the door, ignoring Jenny's call to wait, and drove off. I headed to the small lake where we once shared joyous moments. Despite the chilly weather, the tranquil waters brought solace. Seated at a picnic bench, tears welled up again, not just for my mother, but for the estrangement from my daughters. Jenny's anger conveyed all I needed to know. Doubts crept in about my past actions, not with Katie, but with my girls. What had I done to earn their resentment? Katie's betrayal had shattered our family, yet my daughters couldn't see it. Lost in thought, I heard footsteps nearing. Turning, I found Katie and the girls approaching. "How did you find me here?" I turned back to the lake. "You forgot to turn off our Find My Phone app," Kathy replied. "Bill, I'm sorry about your mom," she added. "Yeah," I muttered. "Do you regret her pass away or turning her against me?" She fell silent. "Leave me alone. I can't deal with your stuff right now," I said. "I'll never forgive you." The last time we spoke, she insisted she wouldn't talk to me until I backed out of the divorce. She didn't even say she loved me before hanging up. "I'm so sorry, Bill," she said before leaving. Then Jenny spoke up. "Dad, we're sorry too. Please forgive us for being rude." They both rushed over to hug me and we cried together. "It's not my fault, girls. Your mother's actions broke us apart," I said. "We're sorry, Dad," Jill said. "We just wanted you to forgive her. She loves you. It's obvious." "Not enough to stay faithful," I replied. "Jill, I'm sorry, girls," I said tearfully. We hugged again while Kathy watched from the car. "Girls, I need you. You'll leave for college soon and I'll miss you. We're wasting time," I said. "We understand, Daddy," Jenny said. "We won't shut you out anymore." "I wish Grandma had the chance to do the same," Jill added. "Can we come with you, Daddy? We haven't seen your new house yet. Maybe we could grab pizza." "Sure, let your mom know, and let's head out." As I pulled into my driveway, I spotted Missy's car. I had forgotten she was coming. "Looks like you'll meet Missy," I told the girls. "Is she your girlfriend?" they asked simultaneously, making me chuckle. "Yeah, well, we just started dating." Look at him blushing. "So cute, Jenny." They dashed out of the car and bombarded Missy with questions, leaving her bewildered. "Girls, give her a break. Help her inside, and I'll introduce you properly." They kissed my cheek and hurried to the garage while I approached Missy. "Sorry about that," I said. She opened the door with a radiant smile and kissed my cheek. "Your daughters?" she asked. I nodded. "Come on, let's make proper introductions." "I hope I look okay. I must look awful." "You're fine. They'll like you, Jenny." "Jill, meet Missy," I said. They embraced Jenny and cheekily declared, "You're super hot." Jill exclaimed, "Good for you, Daddy." Missy laughed, leaving me too stunned to respond. "Let's do a quick tour of the house. Then I need to handle some things for Grandma's services. Bill, I'll order pizza while you show them around." "Perfect. You read my mind." "Ooh," the girls cooed. As Missy smiled, I made the decision to wait until the next morning to inform others about my mom's passing. I'll draft an obituary for Monday's paper and share service details on Facebook. Tomorrow evening, after visiting the funeral home, we spent hours sharing stories about my mom and my girls, with a few embarrassing tales about myself thrown in to keep Missy entertained. It wasn't my fault I slipped on the wet pier and fell into the lake. Before we knew it, it was already 10. "Girls, time is slipping away and it's getting late," I remarked. They frowned and asked if they could stay the night. "I don't have beds for the guest rooms yet," I explained. "Tell you what, I'll pick you up in the morning, and we'll go out for breakfast." "Okay, and if you don't mind, we could help sort through Grandma's things too," Jill offered. "Thank you," I replied. "Missy, would you like to join us for a ride, or do you need to go home to Mia? She's staying with my parents." Jill's curiosity piqued. "Who's Mia?" "Mia is my 4-year-old daughter," I revealed. Excited, they both squealed, expressing their eagerness to meet her. Missy chuckled at their enthusiasm. "Someday soon, I promise." As we returned to my house, Missy commented, "They're great girls. I'm glad you were able to reconnect with them." I sighed. "Me too. I just wish it didn't take my mom's passing to bring us back together." With Missy nestled in my arms, I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I awoke to find Missy still snuggled against me under a blanket. Feeling a sense of longing for closeness, I kissed her head and apologized for falling asleep. She moaned, stretching. "It's okay, baby. You've had a very emotional day. Would you like to join me and the girls for breakfast?" "Only if I can bring Mia. My parents have plans this morning." "Of course, my daughters will love her." Needing to fetch Mia, I arranged to meet my daughters at IHOP. As I walked in holding Mia's hand, my girls rushed over. They embraced Mia, twirled her in the air, and showered her with kisses, making her squeal and giggle with joy. "We need to go to the bathroom," the girls announced in unison. "We'll take her," they said, whisking Mia away. "I don't know, Missy. Do you think they'll get along?" I asked, smirking. She playfully clapped me on the shoulder and kissed my cheek. "I hope they remain friends for years to come." Although it was just our first date, she expressed a long-term commitment, which was a bit surprising but reassuring. As we ate, Mia and my daughters chatted incessantly about everything. Mia showed genuine interest in their lives, peppering them with questions. My daughters, accustomed to babysitting, engaged effortlessly with Mia, bonding over shared interests in kids' shows and movies. Surprisingly, they also got along well with Missy, showing no hostility or anger toward her, unlike their initial reaction to my dating. This puzzled me, and I planned to discuss it with them later. After a busy day of phone calls, cleaning my mom's house, and visiting the funeral home, I finally relaxed when the girls returned for dinner, and Missy and Mia went their separate ways. During breakfast, Missy suggested avoiding the emotional strain of Mia's questions while sorting out my mom's house. "Daddy, are you in love with Missy?" Jenny asked abruptly. "We've only seen each other a few times outside of work. It's too early to say it's love." "Okay, Dad," Jill said, sounding like I was clueless. "You know those cartoons where girls get dreamy-eyed and hearts flutter? That's Missy when she looks at you," Jill said before I could object. They exchanged looks and then declared, "We like her." I went from joy to anger. Setting my pizza down, I headed to the sink to cool off. "Daddy," Jenny asked, "how could you shut me out all this time and now say you like my girlfriend? What did I do to deserve this? Do you know how many times I cried after leaving you messages you didn't care to hear?" "Mom made us what?" I exclaimed. Jill explained, "It began when Mom said if you felt distant, you could return to her, and we'd be a family again. We're truly sorry." Turning to Jenny, I saw her eyes tear up, and she rushed to hug me. "Dad, we're so sorry." "When that didn't work, she said you abandoned us and wouldn't pay for college because we wanted you to stay with her. She claimed your messages during the divorce were just tactics to win favor with the judge." "You believed her?" "Dad, imagine sitting with her every day, hearing her defend one mistake against 20 years of love. We thought you were being unfair. What if it was you? Would you forgive your boyfriend for cheating?" No response. "Where's the line?" I demanded. "Unclear." "Give me a clear answer." They wept, and our hug calmed me. "I've missed you both so much," I said. After they professed their love, I reminded them, "Time to go home. School's tomorrow. Make sure your mom tells them about the wake and funeral. You'll need time off this week." One last embrace, then I watched them drive off, feeling warmth inside. Looking at the sky, I whispered, "Mom, you didn't have to leave to bring my girls back, but thank you. I'll miss you." Wakes are always hard for me. Being near a deceased body is unsettling. My mom's wake was especially tough. Approaching her casket brought me solace, seeing her peaceful face. I knew she'd reunite with my late father, who avoided wakes. Mom planned hers meticulously, even choosing the casket. It was a relief knowing she had everything sorted. Chatting with one of her friends, Katie and my daughters arrived. Tearful hugs from the girls greeted me, while Katie stepped aside respectfully. After the prayer, Kathy placed something in the casket, then sat alone at the back. I saw it was a photo of Kathy, me, and my mom, all holding our babies, beaming. Touched, I took the photo and put it by my mom's hands, tears welling up. During the service, Kathy stayed seated at the back, chatting with everyone. Her bond with family members and their affection for her showed her enduring presence in our lives. The standard rule was for immediate family to sit in the front row, but it didn't feel right. Seeing Katie at the back, tears in her eyes, I knew Mom wouldn't have wanted it that way. Walking over, I invited her to join us. "Come here. No need to hide." She hugged me gratefully, whispering a thank you. Back in front, my Uncle John offered her his seat, earning Missy's praise. Holding Missy's hand while my ex-wife was nearby felt surreal. I hoped it wouldn't cause trouble later. As we said goodbye to the last visitors, Kathy thanked me for welcoming her into the family, offering to share the limo ride. Missy's hand on my waist, I feared tension, but Katie's departure eased it. "Let's get you home," Missy said, embracing me. In the kitchen, relieved the day was over, I handed Missy a cold beer. She thought things went well with Kathy. "Yeah, I'm glad. I half expected her to cause trouble with you." "The girls probably helped. We'll be okay after tomorrow." I hoped she was right. Maybe I was just paranoid about Katie and Missy. "Will you stay over tonight?" She squeezed my hand. "You couldn't kick me out if you tried." We didn't make love, but her presence brought the best sleep since the divorce. "You're keeping a close eye on me. I won't misuse your kindness by starting a fight," Kathy remarked as we waited for the service to begin. "I know I lied. I just feel uneasy about it." She snorted, adding, "How do you think I feel? I'm an outcast here, a disgrace." I frowned. "No one sees you that way, especially not today. I'm sorry, Bill. I wish I could undo it all." "I wish," she said, tears welling up before hurrying off to the bathroom. "It's tough for all of us, Bill." My mother's friend Jean comforted me, patting my shoulder. "Your mom was wonderful, and we'll all miss her." I kissed her cheek, grateful that Kathy had her mom to support her through the tears. After the funeral, we gathered at my mother's favorite Polish restaurant. Kathy looked uneasy as she searched for a seat. Taking her hand, I guided her to the table where Missy and my daughters sat. "Kathy, we'll always be family. Despite the divorce, no matter where we sit, you're always welcome." A tear rolled down her cheek as she thanked me, and in that moment I felt like I'd finally let go of the pain she caused. Life moved on. The girls Skype with me weekly while they're at college. Missy and I are going strong, and I'm considering popping the question soon. Katie and I don't talk much, but it's always friendly. She's moving on too, dating a nice divorced dad who's a friend of one of the girls. I wish them the best. Some may say I should forgive her one mistake, but I can't. I may be seen as the villain by some, but I'm at peace with myself.
My wife cheated on me with her boss and wanted an open marriage, so I took everything and disappeared. I stood in a dim corner of the ballroom, observing a couple swaying on the dance floor, their eyes fixed on each other. As her partner drew her closer, the woman's chest rose and fell, her small frame pressed against his large one. Their movements were graceful, he with the agility of an athlete, she following suit admirably. All eyes were on them, sensing a strong emotional connection, perhaps not love, but certainly more than friendship. Her honey blonde hair cascaded gently as she leaned into him, though her proximity was more a result of his firm grip than her own choice. I might have been envious of their bond if the woman weren't my wife of 11 years, now in the embrace of her boss. Instead, I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. It wasn't the first time we'd attended her company's annual awards banquet, and everyone there knew she was married to me. I noticed people searching for me, anticipating the inevitable confrontation. After 3 dances, they left the dance floor together, joining colleagues at a central table. I watched as she gazed at him with the same fervor she once reserved for me, though it had been some time since I'd seen that look. The revulsion inside me only grew. All I could think was that the eruption was imminent. The pressure was building, but I just had to hold on a little longer. I grappled with the conflict between my current feelings of fear, hatred, and resentment towards the scene unfolding before me, and the love, respect, and trust I once held for my beloved wife. It was a battle I found myself losing, despite my efforts to overcome these emotions. Now I was sinking into despair and self-pity, bowing my head in defeat. Over the past months, I had exerted immense effort to win her back and mend the fractures in our marriage. I meticulously planned date nights, attended to household chores, switched off the TV, and attempted to engage in conversation, only to have her walk away. I left flowers, heartfelt notes, and love-filled cards, only to discover them discarded in the trash. Even sending flowers to her workplace yielded no response. What more could I do but wait, I wondered to myself. Pushing these distressing thoughts aside, I made my way back to the makeshift bar nestled in the corner of the room. Standing behind Marianne, an acquaintance of my wife's from her previous workplace, I asked, striving to appear nonchalant, "Having a good time? I always enjoy these yearly gatherings." "Harold sure does love those free drinks," she responded. I offered a smile and nodded, lifting my empty glass. "Me too. By the way, I haven't spotted Jason's wife around. Any idea where she might be?" I hoped my anxiety didn't betray me. "She always dresses so elegantly and is delightful to converse with." "Oh, didn't Kel mention that today Jason served her with divorce papers?" "I guess she was neglecting her marital responsibilities," Marianne blurted out, her words lacking much filter as she reached a certain level of intoxication. I found her lack of restraint rather fitting. "No, I don't think so, especially since it's Friday night and all. We came straight here after I finished work, and there wasn't any time for gossiping." I didn't just stretch the truth, it was a blatant lie. "We even took the afternoon off to prepare for tonight. She had plenty of opportunity to bring it up, but she chose not to," I replied, refilling my Captain and diet and fetching a glass of white wine for Kelsey before making my way over to where she and Jason were standing. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice my approach. "Kel, I brought you a glass of wine," I said, handing her the drink. She jumped slightly at the sound of my voice. "Oh, you startled me," she exclaimed, taking the glass. "Thank you, dear." The rest of us felt increasingly uneasy the longer we lingered. Most people suddenly found the tablecloth quite captivating or discovered something fascinating across the room, avoiding direct eye contact. Others stared, likely pondering my thoughts and how oblivious I appeared. A younger guy, approximately 25 years old, even flashed a grin when he noticed me eyeing the table. We locked gazes for a moment before his smile faded and he too suddenly found the tablecloth fascinating. Approaching 1 in the morning, many guests had already departed from the hotel hall heading home. However, it was evident that Kelsey wasn't quite ready to part ways with her dance partner. "We should probably head home, honey. I still need to drop off the babysitter, and we promised we wouldn't keep her past 2 tonight," I mentioned, realizing I was intruding on her time with Jason. "Sure, okay. I think it's time for us to leave. See you on Monday," she said with a smile. Relief washed over all of us as the awkwardness neared its end. "Jason, it was nice seeing you," I added, extending my hand for a shake, which he returned. He had a firm grip, evidently trying to assert his strength. Standing 3 inches taller than my 6 feet, he outweighed me by about 15 pounds, and I noticed a slight punch on my stomach, pressing a bit firmer than usual. I met his gaze, sensing deceit and self-righteousness in his eyes. Eventually, he released my hand and bid us goodnight. I waved to the remaining guests as we exited the room and headed to the car. We remained silent during the drive home, although Kelsey wore a radiant smile. Upon arriving home, Kelsey checked on Caitlin, our 9-year-old daughter, while I settled up with Brittany and prepared to take her home. Upon my return, I headed to the bedroom to find Kelsey already asleep in bed. After checking on Caitlin, I visited the bathroom before retiring to the spare room for the night. I knew any possibility of closeness between us was out of the question tonight. As I struggled to recall the last time we had been carnal, with my eyes closing, the ceiling was the last thing I saw before slipping into a restless sleep. Rising early on Saturday morning, I mentally went through my checklist for the day. Caitlin was already in the living room, engrossed in her shows, and I offered a slight wave from the doorway. "Have you had breakfast yet?" I inquired. "Yep," she confirmed, waving a spoon dripping with milk, splattering drops onto the carpet. "All right, settle down. Mom's still sleeping and I need to get to work in my office," I reminded her. "Got it, Dad," she replied with unnecessary volume, causing me to chuckle. Around 8:30, I dialed my lawyer's cell phone, knowing he often worked from home on Saturday mornings. "Good morning, Bill. It's Matthew Franks," I greeted. "Morning, Matt. I'm guessing this isn't a cheery call," he responded, already anticipating the nature of the conversation. "You got it. It's time to set the plan in motion. I've learned that Jason served his wife yesterday. Any word if Kelsey has consulted with a lawyer yet?" "I don't think so, but I'll double-check. Let's meet at the coffee shop in half an hour. Make sure to sign and date the forms with my assistant for notarized paperwork first thing Monday morning and serve her at lunch," Bill outlined the plan. "Sounds good to me. See you soon," I confirmed before ending the call. Arriving early at the coffee shop, I offered a faint smile to the person behind the counter before collecting my order and settling into a cozy chair by the fireplace, lost in thought. I never imagined I'd be divorcing the one true love of my life. It's challenging to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize your comfortable life is unraveling. For me, it was triggered by a traffic ticket, one of those automatic camera checks for running a red light. When the notice arrived in the mail, I chuckled, instantly recognizing it as Kelsey's doing. She always flipped on her headlights when in a rush. I opened the envelope, deciding to silently shed tears instead of speaking. It seemed futile to confront this directly. The photo depicted Kelsey with a man's shoulder and arm visible beside her. Though his face wasn't visible, I knew who it was. Nothing seemed particularly suspicious. She could have been at lunch or a meeting. I checked the date, March 5th, and something about it bothered me. Recalling our text messages, I remembered plans to stop by Mary's after work to pick up clothes for Kate. At the time, it didn't strike me as unusual. Despite my suspicions, I dismissed them, attributing it to Mary's usual generosity. Checking the intersection on Google Maps revealed it was on the opposite end of town from Mary's residence. Still, I tried to convince myself it could be innocent. However, as I pieced together events since late November, doubts grew. Kelsey had kept a low profile, and holiday arguments became commonplace. By January, affection dwindled, and our conversations revolved around work or Caitlin. We no longer discussed our dreams, family vacations, or our future together. Since childhood, I've had a trust fund. Initially, my great-grandfather purchased undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest, selling portions as the local town expanded. Upon his passing, I inherited proceeds from these sales, boosting the fund. Following my grandfather's passing, it grew once more. Thankfully, my family's self-sufficiency meant I never had to dip into it. The balance stabilized and even grew slightly through accrued interest. Upon my father's demise, with my mother also deceased, I inherited all family property, merging it with my trust. With our accumulated wealth, we were on the verge of settling for life. However, Kelsey and I continued to work and increase our net worth in anticipation of retirement. I obtained a prenuptial agreement to safeguard the fund. Throughout our marriage, Kelsey and I regularly updated our prenup and wills. One clause that remained unchanged was the standard divorce clause delineating asset ownership. We also included a provision for Caitlin's education in case of my passing or divorce, with specific conditions regarding the circumstances. To ensure preparedness, I maintained access to legal and accounting services. Seeking advice, I reached out to my lawyer for a referral to the best local divorce attorney, scheduling a consultation later in the week to explore my options. Given our sturdy prenup, he remained unworried about potential financial concerns. I clarified that while I wasn't ready to take drastic action yet, I sought guidance on the next steps. Well, Matt, one option is to hire a private investigator to delve into the situation and ascertain if there's cause for concern. Unfortunately, all my PIs are currently tied up with other cases. It'll be several weeks before they can prioritize yours. But I'm not keen on waiting. This is already keeping me up at night. Are there any other avenues we could explore?
There is one possibility, albeit a somewhat dubious one.
He's trying to turn over a new leaf, but he's not exactly the most trustworthy character. We affectionately refer to him as Larry the Rogue, Bill elaborated. He's a former cop who got the boot due to complaints and some shady dealings. He could get started immediately, but I'm hesitant to recommend a long-term partnership with him. Why the nickname? I inquired with a chuckle. I want to ensure everything is above board, so if we uncover anything, we're on solid legal footing if we need to proceed. That's fine. Is he legit? I understand he has a knack for obtaining evidence, such as detailed photos, videos, emails, and phone conversations that, let's say, tread the fine line of what's admissible in court. But I've heard his findings are ultimately conclusive proof of infidelity, one way or another. All right. As long as it's within legal bounds, we can settle with him for now and transition to a more reputable private investigator in a couple of weeks, I mused. Pausing, I added, do you reckon he can kick things off today? I'll give him a call and find out. I'll keep you posted. Here in the office? Sound good. I handled a stack of paperwork for both the lawyer and the dubious investigator, facilitated his connection with my accountant, and kept the retainer fee separate from my personal account to ensure Kelsey remained unaware of my actions. I didn't want to alarm her, especially if this turmoil in our marriage was just a passing phase. Meanwhile, amidst these proceedings, I endeavored to mend my relationship with my wife. Life had taught me that significant changes and out-of-character actions usually have underlying causes. Uncertain about what drove my wife's behavior and whether we were beyond reconciliation, I resolved to fulfill my husbandly duties. Taking matters into my own hands, I showered her with affection and aimed to become the epitome of a loving and supportive husband. Yet my efforts were met with rejection at every turn, signaling that we may have reached an irreversible breaking point. One Thursday afternoon, I was summoned to my lawyer's office to review the findings unearthed by the rogue investigator. I was presented with hours of footage capturing their liaison, carnal encounters, and apparent bliss as a couple, accompanied by photographs, call logs, and personal correspondence. The evidence left me both impressed and repulsed by the rogue's methods, affirming the appropriateness of his moniker. I sat there devastated. The idea of Kelsey having an affair with Jason Stanton was inconceivable to me. I could see the appeal of Jason, tall, handsome, and well-built with a promising career trajectory. Taking charge of Kelsey's department as her personal assistant about a year ago, he had ample opportunity to integrate into her life. A former college baseball star, sidelined by a shoulder injury in his senior year, Jason's achievements were impressive. But I never imagined Kelsey allowing him to wedge between us. The weight of it all was crushing. I struggled to breathe. My chest constricted, my vision blurred, and I felt lightheaded. Pushing my chair back, I leaned forward, trying to steady my breath. Inhaling and exhaling deeply, I fought to regain clarity of mind. The sense of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I had lost my confidant, my partner, my lover, and the mother of my child. In that moment, I saw no way forward. Then it worsened. He played back the recording from the day before, revealing why he had gathered us all together. "Really, do you love me?" Her voice was tinged with excitement. "Yes, my dear. You're perfect. I love you and want us to be a family." "You mean you, me, and Caitlin?" "Exactly." "What about Matt and Shannon?" "We'll divorce them. You'll have Caitlin, and we'll be happy together." A stunned silence followed as Kelsey processed the bombshell her lover had dropped. "You really love me, Kel?" "Yes, absolutely. I hadn't really considered leaving Matt." "Consider it for a moment. He can't offer you what I can. You'll be the belle of every ball, part of the elite. You'll experience places and luxuries he could only dream of." I detected the disdain in his tone, picturing the disdainful expression on his face. Losing Kate would devastate him. We're his world. I'll be a far better father than he could ever be. In a year, she won't even want to visit him. "Why do you despise him so much? What has he done to you?" Her voice held a touch of concern. Truthfully, I wondered the same. "He's not worthy of you, Kelsey. He lacks ambition, content to remain stagnant. He's just a cog enriching someone else. Did you know he's a plant manager? His facility employs 400 people, boasting the highest production and revenue per square foot." I felt a twinge of pride that Kelsey was aware, though I would have preferred this discussion in their own dining room rather than a hotel room. "He's weak, a beta without drive or ambition. Never even pursued an MBA. He's served his purpose, honey. I could easily crush him any day of the week." "Jason, don't assume you're superior to Matt. He's not weak. You don't know his backstory. He associated with rough crowds and is skilled with firearms. He nearly took a dark path but chose education. That's why he delayed college after high school." Now she seemed to boast. "He's stronger and tougher than you realize. Promise me you won't resort to violence. I don't want either of you getting hurt, Matt for Kate's sake, and you for mine." "But I'm not. I'm in love with him. I wished it were true, but you replaced him as my man, my love." She paused, pondering. "How will it work when we divorce them simultaneously?" "I need to prepare before serving Shannon. Given her mental health issues and our year-long celibacy, it shouldn't be challenging. I'll split everything 50-50. She's unlikely to object." "Okay, but you must file for Shannon before I consult a lawyer." She was resolute. It seemed she aimed to ensure her stability and not risk her comfortable life, even for her true love's sake. "Come here, woman." I motioned, requesting the recording be turned off. At this juncture, listening was unnecessary. I glanced at Bill, grappling with how to handle this. "You strike first, Matt." "But what if she changes her mind?" "They rarely do that, Mr. Franks," he remarked solemnly. "I'm afraid they've reached a point where nothing you do or say will sway them," Bill added. I observed the scoundrel closely for the first time. He appeared to be in his 30s, fit, and his suit was impeccably tailored, quite unlike my preconceptions. Respectful and seemingly insightful, I began to view him more as Larry than the scoundrel. It seemed he genuinely cared, despite being paid for his services. "Would you still want her after knowing all this?" Larry inquired, echoing Bill's sentiments. "You're probably right, Larry," I acknowledged. Turning to Bill, "Give me a day or two to decide, and I'll be in touch." "All right, sounds good, Matt. Shall we draft the documents now and finalize details later or halt the process if needed?" Bill proposed. "Yes, let's proceed that way," I agreed. Larry handed me his business card as we concluded. "Here's my personal number, Mr. Franks, in case you ever need me." "Please, Larry, call me Matt," I insisted. "Thank you." Matt, if you decide to pursue revenge, I know some people who could assist. After all, they don't call me Larry the Dastard for nothing, he remarked with a grin. Appreciative but uncertain, I responded, Nice meeting you, Larry. I'll reach out if I need assistance, though I doubt I could go through with it against Kel. It's reassuring to know I have support if I choose that path. With a smile, Larry bid farewell and departed in his car. Throughout the weekend, I grappled with my decision, struggling to focus on anything else. It seemed Kelsey was oblivious to the gravity of the situation, having already decided our family's fate. Doubt, anger, fear, and disappointment consumed me, particularly the loss of my identity and family. Caitlin's future weighed heavily on my mind, aggravated by the thought of this arrogant man raising her. Emotions ran rampant, leaving me in a fog of confusion until Sunday morning when clarity dawned. Sitting on the back porch with a pounding headache, it dawned on me that this fate was inevitable, regardless of my resistance. I'd already lost my wife and family, now it was a matter of how and on whose terms. The saying, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way resonated with me. I refused to step aside or follow these schemers. There was only one option left, to lead. On Monday morning, I phoned Bill. Bill, it's Matt Franks calling. Good morning, Matt. Any progress on finding a solution? Yes, I'd like you to complete all the necessary paperwork, including only the legal photos Larry obtained. Split everything evenly. I hesitated. Do you think we should sell the house? Yes. We used a low-interest loan from my trust to purchase it, so essentially we've been paying ourselves all along. We'll divide any proceeds from the sale, but I'll repay the full loan amount and the accumulated interest. Also, please allocate $200,000 from my trust to Kel as a considerate payment for her services. It might soften her stance if she knows she won't be left destitute. I'm seeking primary custody of Kate. I understand it won't be simple, but perhaps Larry can uncover some damning information about Jason that diminishes his suitability as a father figure. I've heard he was quite the fraternity standout in college. Maybe he got carried away with some of his exploits. Please have Larry investigate. I have a contingency plan for Kate if primary custody isn't granted. Draft the most generous shared custody arrangement imaginable for me. I paused to allow Bill to catch up. Additionally, I intend to file a lawsuit against Jason for alienation of love and affection. I want to involve his wife Shannon in this ordeal as well, ensuring she's fully informed of the situation within legal bounds. On that note, I'd like you to devise another infidelity divorce plan for her. I'll cover the expenses while we serve them both. In the exclusion room, it's unlikely to yield significant results. I'll also need Shannon to sign a contract with me. I can start drafting the forms, but without her consent or details, I'm unable to proceed further, Bill clarified. I see what you're aiming for. It's about stirring the pot a bit. And while we're at it, I want to sue Kelsey's employer for permitting her affair with her boss. While there may not be a moral clause in their manual, it's dubious for any company to overlook such misconduct under supervision, especially given his position as her direct superior. It's doubtful this will go far, but let's rattle the cage and see what unfolds. Understood, Matt. This will incur substantial costs upfront and potentially escalate. We're looking at extensive manpower here, and if this escalates further, I want to ensure they don't profit unjustly. As my dad used to say, engaging a lawyer is essentially negotiating the price. Bill chuckled at my sarcastic remark about lawyers, remarking, Your dad was a wise man indeed. Remember, you're not obligated to provide her any funds from your trust. Your prenuptial agreement is rock solid. I understand, Bill, but after reflecting on it over the weekend, I've decided that if I don't leave her in financial straits, she might be more inclined to meet my terms. And truthfully, she deserves it. She put in hard work and supported me. We were both saving for our future together. I figured it might give her an edge over Jason, so she won't have to rely on him as much when she's on her own. She deserves better, but there's no way I'm giving that cheating scoundrel Jason more than he's already taken from me in life. I mean, my wife should have been enough. As I spoke, I felt a surge of anger, thinking about how Jason had seized the life that should have been mine. Despite the circumstances, I always strived to be fair in my relationships and wanted to ensure I treated Kelsey with fairness, even if she didn't reciprocate. My solace is knowing that Caitlin will understand my actions later on, when she sees how our family fell apart. Before I forget, Bill, hold off on any filings for now. I want everything prepared and ready to go, but I prefer to wait for her to make the initial move. This way, I'll have more time with Kate in our family home. I know there will come a point when I have to act, but I want to delay until the very last moment when I can't bear it any longer. Got it. We'll keep everything undated and notarized until you're ready. I work from home on Saturday morning, so feel free to call me then too. We can't file until Monday morning anyway, but I'll have someone ready to serve them as soon as the doors open. Okay, that's the plan. Goodbye for now. I retrieved Larry's business card from my pocket and dialed the number. Larry, it's Matt Franks. How's it going? I'm good, he replied. Are you ready for some dirty work? Well, kind of. But I need you to hold off until I give the green light. No problem, Matt. What's the game plan? Can we meet up? Yes, give me an hour. Sounds good, I responded. I was already waiting when he pulled into the parking lot. After grabbing some coffee and a snack, he sat across from me. I want to gather all the damning evidence, photos, videos, recordings, everything. And we need to figure out a way to anonymously send it to Shannon Stanton, perhaps through email. No problem. I know someone who operates on the dark web, Larry said, and that's it. How about posting a video on a 30th site or sending nasty messages to Kelsey's parents or coworkers? Man, he's devious, I thought. No, Kel still has to stay in town. I wouldn't want her so humiliated that she leaves town with Kate. And despite everything, I still love her, even if she doesn't love me anymore. I slid an envelope containing $5,000 in cash across the table. This should help you get started, but let me know if you need more. Larry accepted the money and glanced at me. I think $3,000 will suffice. He may be tough, but at least he's straightforward. Consider the rest as an advance. I might require your expertise later. Remember, stay on standby until I contact you. I want to catch them off guard, and I have my reasons for allowing them to make the first move. Oh, and we also need to gather information on his wife's health issues. Her medical background could impact our decisions down the line. Can you handle that? Absolutely, Larry replied. And Bill mentioned you were looking into Jason's college years. I'm hoping to uncover something useful if custody becomes a battle. Larry nodded, jotting down a few notes on his pad. After finishing our coffee and exchanging stories about his past experiences as a cop and people we might have known, we shook hands and parted ways. That was 3 months ago. My thoughts returned to the present as Bill arrived, followed shortly by his assistant and Larry. Ready to proceed? Bill inquired once we were all seated. Yes, it seems that way. Larry, do we have any indication if Kelsey has sought legal counsel? As far as I know, no, I replied. I quickly checked her email after Bill's call and didn't find anything. I'll take a closer look today, and should know by Monday morning. Larry grinned and gave me a knowing wink. And what about Jason? Any skeletons in his closet? I asked with a glimmer of hope. Well, he was under investigation during his time in the fraternity. Allegations involving date abduction medications and underage girls at parties, Larry revealed. I've received copies of everything and have already handed them over to Bill, I informed the group. Bill glanced up, confirming, I have them in case we need them for the custody hearing. Retrieving the documents we had been diligently working on for the past few months, he indicated where I needed to sign. After signing, Bill's assistant notarized them, and I turned to address the group. Larry, can you find out who Shannon Stanton has hired as her lawyer and inform Bill? Bill, if he's competent, could you share our legal file with him? What if he's not up to par? Bill inquired. Then we'll figure out a way to connect you with Shannon, but I prefer we handle it properly. Bill, can I collect the documents on Monday afternoon? I plan to hand the paperwork to Kelsey personally, first informing her of the situation, and then you can officially serve her on Tuesday. Bill nodded understandingly and conferred with his assistant about preparing the server for Tuesday. I believe we can begin reaching out to Shannon, since she'll likely be updated soon. Bill, you can share the file with Shannon's lawyer on Monday afternoon, provided it doesn't interfere with my discussion with Kelsey on Monday evening. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply. Things should be fully underway by Wednesday. Matt, have you considered where Kelsey will stay on Monday night? Bill inquired suddenly. Would it be an issue for her to stay at the house for a few days? No, unless a restraining order is obtained and she consents. I wouldn't share a bed with her. Legally, it shouldn't be an issue, but it might make you uneasy. I'd worry about how a less scrupulous lawyer might exploit this information, Bill added. All right, I'll give her a week to find alternate accommodations. We're not carnal at the moment, so I don't foresee any issues. Oh, you mean sharing the same bed, but our documents grant me temporary control of the house and custody of Kate, right? Yes, until her attorney files a motion to overturn the arrangement or until we all reach a consensus. I meant actually sharing the same bed. It might give off an odd vibe, Bill explained. Don't worry, we're not sharing a bed currently. Hey Larry, what did you uncover about Shannon's health? She's been battling depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the medications have dampened her libido, so Mr. Wonderful went searching elsewhere. I'm not sure we want to know how you obtained this information, I remarked. Larry simply grinned and shook his head while Bill pretended to be shocked. Bill, Does this have any relevance to our situation? I inquired. Not at the moment. It might become significant later when we address guardianship and determine living arrangements, Bill clarified. As Bill jotted down notes on his iPad, we conversed for a few more minutes before gradually concluding our strategy session and resuming our respective tasks for the day. I felt somewhat disheartened for the remainder of the weekend, weighed down by the impending responsibilities awaiting me on Monday. Kelsey remained oblivious to any changes, as expected. On Sunday, I arranged for my aunt to pick up Caitlin from school on Monday and care for her overnight, allowing me to discuss important family matters with Kelsey. They resided on a farm outside the city, and Caitlin enjoyed playing with their dogs and tending to the animals. She'd be taking Caitlin to school on Tuesday, and I've decided we'll break the news to Caitlin on Tuesday evening. I informed Caitlin about these arrangements, and while she was excited, she seemed a bit puzzled about why she had to wait until Tuesday. I simply explained that Mom and Dad needed some personal time to discuss everything. She reluctantly accepted it. I slept in the spare room again, and once more, Kelsey didn't mention it. She visibly sighed with relief when she saw me heading there before bed. As I lay there Sunday night running through my checklist and reviewing my plan, I eventually drifted off to sleep. On Monday morning, I contacted my VP of Operations and requested a week off. I also reached out to my assistant and senior production manager to provide them with any necessary details while I was away. Around 1 in the afternoon, I entered Bill's office and unexpectedly found Larry there. I noticed a stack of papers on the desk, and the bustling activity in the office indicated that everyone was occupied. Matt, we filed the paperwork at the courthouse this morning, and here are Kelsey's documents as you requested. We've arranged for the official filing at your home around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Is that suitable? Bill inquired, handing me the envelopes. Yes, that should work. I'll try to persuade her to take the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if that changes, I responded. Great, that's settled. Bill paused momentarily to gather his thoughts before continuing. Larry found Shannon's lawyer, and he's quite competent, so I forwarded him our files, and he seemed quite eager. He might countersue for infidelity and aim for a larger share of their assets than just a 50-50 split. He assured me he won't take any action until tomorrow morning, so everything seems fine. Okay, gentlemen, are we forgetting anything? I inquired. Just a little update. It appears Kelsey has an appointment with her lawyer next week based on her calls and emails. And Matt, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need further assistance, Larry asked cautiously, earning another sharp glance from Bill regarding the ongoing situation. Great, sounds good, I responded, hoping I wouldn't have to delve any deeper into this mess. I guess it's all in Kelsey and Jason's hands now. Leaving Bill's office, I sent a text to Kelsey. Kel, will you be home by 5:30 tonight? Why, what's going on? She replied. Nothing serious. I was a bit preoccupied over the weekend and wanted to catch up tonight. I arranged for Aunt Alex to pick up Kate and keep her overnight. I thought I'd bring dinner home. Any requests? How thoughtful. Ready. I'll have dinner ready at 5:30. I felt guilty for setting her up like this, but it had become a common occurrence for me lately. I hoped she would interpret it as me making an extra effort to be affectionate. Kelsey arrived home around 5:15 and changed while I set the table and served the food. I poured us each a glass of wine and sat at the table, waiting for her. She took a long sip from her glass as she joined me. We shared the food and engaged in light conversation, and she seemed completely unaware of what was about to unfold. What's your schedule like for the rest of the week? I inquired after we finished eating, both of us freely picking at our favorite dishes. Do you want to make plans? She asked, glancing at me sideways. No, I thought you might want to take a week off after we talk, I stated in a flat tone, trying to keep any emotion out of my voice. Why should I do that? You'll understand, Kel, I said, placing the envelope on the table in front of her. She glanced at it and then back at me, taking another sip of wine. I'm aware of Jason and your intentions to file for divorce, I stated bluntly. She coughed slightly, surprised, and stared at me with a blank expression. I could see her mind working, trying to comprehend how I found out and what action she could take to slow me down. What scam? She finally grasped, referring to the meeting with the lawyer next week and Jason's filing against Shannon. I know you're in love with him and plan to take Kate and leave me. I opened the bag and slid some photos toward her. Her eyes widened as she set her glass down and picked up the photos, scanning through them. I noticed her eyes glistening and heard her start to hiccup slightly, a sign of her emotional distress. I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never wanted any of this to happen. I don't know what else to say, she murmured, her gaze fixed on the table. I understand, Kel. I've been aware of your intentions for months now. I've had time to come to terms with it to some extent. It's incredibly disappointing and painful for me, I responded solemnly. I took a moment to compose myself, attempting to control my rising anger. The only thing I need to know is if there's something I did or didn't do that pushed you toward Jason, I pressed. Oh God, no, she exclaimed, meeting my gaze briefly before looking away. I think it just happened out of guilt and shame. You didn't do anything. You were a wonderful husband and father. I just fell for him, she confessed, her voice breaking. I felt a mix of disappointment and relief. It seemed there was nothing I could do. If she had simply fallen out of love with me and chosen Jason, he had evidently taken enough time to win her over and push me out, leaving me powerless to stop it. Our marriage had reached its end, and all that remained was paperwork. I presented the terms of the divorce and handed them to her. Here's the proposed agreement. I've already filed my application, so you won't need to do that if you agree to my terms. The main points include upholding the prenuptial agreement, meaning my trust is off the table. I'm offering to sell off our joint assets and split them equally, including the house. Since I filed first, I'm requesting full custody of Caitlin and minimal child support. Of course, you'll have a flexible visitation schedule. I'll keep her on my insurance, but you'll need to arrange for your own. You can keep your $401k and any investments from the marriage, as well as the inheritance from your mom. I don't want to take what's rightfully yours. We'll divide the investments we made together. Kate and I will remain in the house until it's sold. Additionally, I'm providing $200,000 from my trust to help you get settled. I suggest you create a prenuptial agreement to safeguard your assets if you proceed with Jason. I want to ensure you're self-sufficient, so I'm not asking for spousal support. I paused to let her process what I'd outlined. I think I should have custody of Caitlin. She'll need her mother as she grows up, she asserted. I wholeheartedly agree, but you can be involved through visits and calls. Frankly, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I know he plans to win her over with gifts and charm. Since he couldn't have his own child, he wants mine. I'm already generous in letting him have you, but he won't have our daughter. I understand you'll want to discuss custody further. Let's let the lawyers handle it and try to keep it civil. I offered custody as a peace offering after seeing Kate's reaction during her discussion with Jason. He wouldn't damage her, but that's for you to decide. Separating her from her mother isn't the solution. For now, she'll stay with me until we find a better arrangement. You can stay in the master bedroom for a few nights, or a week, while you figure things out. Kelsey, my love for you hasn't wavered. I envisioned us conquering the world together, but your actions are tearing me apart and I'm at a loss. My world feels like it's crumbling, and I'm striving to handle this with fairness and kindness. I genuinely don't want to inflict the pain on you that I'm feeling. But trust me, if you escalate things or let Jason meddle, I won't hesitate to respond in kind. And dear, I have resources at my disposal that neither of you possess. My demeanor shifted, and she could sense the frustration in my voice. I can play hardball if pushed. You've seen this side of me before, so please. Let's keep this conflict at a manageable level and allow the lawyers to navigate it. I truly want to maintain civility and respect in our interactions. It's crucial for Caitlin to see us being civil. I envision both of us playing active roles in our daughter's life. I implore you, I don't want our situation to devolve into a prolonged, bitter battle. I'm available until the end of the week, and according to legal protocol, you must be formally served, which is set to happen here at the house at 9:00 a.m. I didn't want to put you in an awkward spot at work, so you may want to consider taking a few days off as well. I know it'll be tough for both of us to share the same space, but I thought perhaps we could sit down with Caitlin tomorrow night or keep her home on Wednesday to explain the situation. What are your thoughts? Kelsey had lost her appetite and appeared visibly unwell, perhaps realizing the gravity of her actions. She had no one to blame but herself. I was content and oblivious until she disrupted it all. She glanced at me, looking bewildered, and conceded. Matt, you clearly had a plan and outmaneuvered us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll notify work first thing and be home until Wednesday at least. Do you think Aunt Alex can keep Caitlin tomorrow night too? Maybe we'll keep her home from school tomorrow and bring her back Wednesday morning so we can talk. My investigator, Larry, uncovered everything after I sensed something was amiss. I'll call Aunt Alex right away. It seems like a good idea. Kelsey gave a subtle nod when I mentioned Larry. While she gathered some papers, I bid her good night and assumed she needed time alone to process. I watched as she retreated to the master bedroom, locking the door, which didn't bother me, as I had already moved most of my belongings to the spare room. I phoned my aunt, explaining the family situation, and she agreed to keep Caitlin an extra night, dropping her off Wednesday morning. I also informed Caitlin, who was puzzled but accepting. I assured her that her mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I tidied up and prepared for bed, I heard Kelsey murmuring on the phone behind the closed door, followed by quiet sobs as she mourned our broken marriage. Early the next morning, I heard Kelsey downstairs getting ready for work, At precisely 9 a.m., she accepted the package, excluding the sensitive materials. Shortly after, she grabbed her belongings and left without specifying her destination, presumably to meet Jason, her lawyer, or someone else sympathetic to her plight. Later in the day, Bill called to update me that both Jason and their company had received our legal claims. Surprisingly, Shannon had also countersued Jason around the same time. Bill stressed the importance of remaining vigilant, as Jason had apparently made threats against me. Although I never anticipated Jason acting recklessly, given his gains, I took precautions. I retrieved my .45 ACP from the weapons safe, ensured it was loaded, cocked, and locked, then placed it on the chair while I watched TV. A few hours later, while standing at the sink, I spotted a black BMW pulling into my driveway, with an enraged Jason jumping out and retrieving a baseball bat from the back. Sensing danger, I hurried back to my chair, where my cell phone was, and dialed emergency. Feeling safer with the door locked, I reported to the operator that my wife's boyfriend was in the driveway with a baseball bat. As I heard a second car pull up outside, accompanied by screams and voices indicating Kelsey's presence, a high-pitched screech pierced the air. I jumped as my front door shattered from the impact, and Jason burst inside, screaming threats at the top of his lungs. With my hand on the pistol grip, I remained calm. Jason swung the bat wildly as Kelsey screamed outside, pleading with him to stop. "I took your wife, and now I will eliminate you and take your daughter too," he yelled furiously. I allowed him to advance another 5 feet before drawing my weapon. His narrowed eyes indicated poor judgment. Although his bat was raised above his head, it seemed unlikely to be effective at a distance of 25 feet. The weapon shot from the chamber was deafening. I was trained to aim for my targets 3 times, relying on instinct. The second shot followed a split second after the first. Jason slowed down, perhaps due to momentum, and stumbled. By the time the third round was fired, though I noticed movement at the door, I remained focused on my task. The bullet pierced the splintered front door, narrowly missing Kelsey's head. She escaped without injury. Jason fell to his knees before collapsing on his stomach. The area echoed with screams, and the weapon shots seemed louder than expected. Sirens wailed as responding officers approached. Unsure of the situation's severity, they placed Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her by the open door, her cries continuing. Shocked by the unfolding events, I finally noticed the weapon aimed at me and the officer commanding, "Stop! Drop the weapon!" Coming to my senses, I complied and followed his orders. The following 2 weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Jason was declared dead at the scene. Later, I found out through police reports and eyewitnesses that he received both my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife simultaneously. It didn't take him long to figure out that the incriminating photos came from me. Kelsey stood beside him as he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed that she too had a set of those photographs. Shortly after, they were summoned to the vice president's office where they confessed to their affair, unaware of the consequences. Realizing that my lawsuit against the company would likely fail, the management decided to terminate the managing director for engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, which they promptly did. In Jason's eyes, I became the embodiment of evil, and he believed I deserved punishment for thwarting his plans. Grabbing one of his souvenir bats from the office, he set off for my house. Kelsey spotted him through the conference room window on the second floor and guessed his destination. She intercepted him in our driveway, attempting to calm him down before any injury was done to me. Unbeknownst to them, I had been forewarned of their arrival and was prepared. Kelsey ended up with a black eye when Jason struck her while she tried to prevent him from entering. Other than that, she sustained no further injuries but endured months of nightmares amidst police interrogations, legal proceedings, and courtroom appearances. I spoke with her briefly, but we never delved into a deep discussion about the events that transpired in our home. Kelsey was a mere shadow of her former self, having lost her husband, lover, and daughter in less than 24 hours. She never fully recovered. Kelsey remained in touch throughout the divorce proceedings and perhaps for about a month after its conclusion. Surprisingly, she never enlisted a lawyer or contested the divorce, allowing me to easily secure custody of Caitlin. However, to my surprise, she never fulfilled her part of the financial settlement. Bill held onto it for her, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She never returned to our home and instead stayed with family until she vanished. Despite a few supervised visits with Caitlin, they were often awkward or unproductive. Regardless, I ensured Caitlin was available for every scheduled visit, whether confirmed attendance or not. She showed up roughly every 4th visit. I learned that Kelsey had developed a dependency on painkillers and other prescribed medications to manage her mental well-being. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, isolated, and destitute. Neither Caitlin nor I nor anyone she knew had any means of contacting her, and she ceased all communication with us. We were left without a wife and mother. Eventually, we sold the house and purchased another in Caitlin's school district, striving to rebuild our lives. Both Caitlin and I sought counseling to cope with the trauma. While I attended for 6 months, I eventually had to suppress the pain and move forward. I had a daughter to care for and a life to lead. Caitlin underwent counseling for several years intermittently, largely due to her response to the divorce and Kelsey's disappearance. She grappled with numerous psychological challenges. It took me 3 years to gather my bearings enough to consider dating again. A few months later, I encountered a remarkable woman named Jo, who was compassionate and understanding regarding Caitlin's and my circumstances. Our courtship progressed much slower and longer than either of us desired, but eventually evolved into a physical relationship, leading to marriage roughly 16 months later. Jo and I nurtured Caitlin as our own daughter, but opted not to expand our family further. Over time, our lives stabilized and flourished. Our only hurdles centered around significant milestones in Caitlin's life, such as her high school and college graduations. I enlisted Larry's help multiple times in attempts to locate Kelsey, yet every lead proved fruitless. The prevailing belief was that she likely met an unfortunate demise in solitude and despair. It was a harrowing ordeal, but we persevered as best we could and moved forward. I was grateful for the opportunity to devise a strategy and enlist the right assistance to implement it effectively.
My wife cheated with my best friend, so now she's laying in a hospital bed. She's gone from cheater to everyone having sympathy for her, but I'm not a fool anymore. My 27 male wife, 27 female, cheated on me with my best friend, 26 male. I don't even know where to begin. I can't describe how I'm feeling right now or how to process any of this. I made this account initially to see if anyone else has gone through something remotely similar to this, and unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. I apologize in advance for the length of this post. I just needed to get this all out because I thought I'd go insane. I met my wife. We'll call her Sue in college. We were both 18 at the time. We hit it off as soon as we went on our first date, and we were spewing I love yous within weeks of us dating. She kind of pursued me, but I was glad as hell that she did. We shared our deepest insecurities and secrets with each other, and her dad passed away in her senior year of college. I was there for her through the whole ordeal. Her father had pancreatic cancer, and when he was hospitalized, I'd spend nights at the hospital with her, so she wouldn't be alone. We got through it. Point in time strengthened her bond. She told me she didn't know what she would have done if I hadn't been there for her. She called me her soulmate. I knew I was going to marry this girl, and sure enough, I popped the question about 2 years after we graduated. At that point in time, life couldn't get any better for me. I married the girl of my dreams, had a well-paying job immediately after graduating, and both our families loved us. My best friend, we'll call him Dave, and I had what I could only describe as an applicable brotherly bond, or so I thought. We had known each other since 3rd grade, and he was the brother I never had. He was also married, and moved away with his wife because she had landed a lucrative job at a big law firm. About a year ago, his wife died in a car crash, and this broke him. He moved back to our hometown after, but he was never the same. I tried to be there for him, but he wouldn't engage with anyone. No one understood the pain he was going through. So I asked my wife if she could talk to him, seeing as she had also lost a loved one, that maybe Dave could relate better with someone who went through something similar. Yes, I know now that this was a huge mistake. We'd pay him visits daily. She would spend hours on end at his place, even without me there. They were going on hikes together, watching movies, and not inviting me, grabbing lunch. All things couples do. Now, obviously, this was far more interaction than I had intended for them to have, and it did make me uncomfortable, but Dave was doing much better from it. It's important to say that Dave and Sue never liked each other before this all happened. This is because Sue always thought he was a douche. Before he married his wife, Dave was bouncing from a relationship to relationship, and even after he got with his deceased wife, he constantly cheated on her. As a result, Sue had a particularly dislike for him, always questioned how it could be friends with someone with such low morals. This disdain for Dave is also what made me oblivious to what was to come. As I mentioned, Sue and Dave became inseparable, to the point where she would invite him to things I had planned for us as a couple. Moreover, she started portraying characteristics of what I now know to be classic cheater behavior, always on her phone, becoming increasingly distant, little to no intimacy, and coming home very late. At this point, it was all too suspicious, and one day she was texting and I asked who she was talking to. She said it was one of her girlfriends, and when I asked to see what they were saying, she became very irritated and called me possessive. When I talked to Dave about how uncomfortable their friendship was making me, he assured me nothing was up and even accused me of not trusting him and my own wife. I was getting gaslit. This continued until one day, Sue went out again. She said she was going to her sister's for the weekend because she needed some space for me because I was driving her crazy with my accusations. I was still very suspicious and called her sister to confirm if she was indeed expecting Sue to visit. She confirmed that she was, but Sue had not yet arrived. Mind you, she had left around 3 p.m. and her sister's place is about 4 hours away from where we live. It was now 10 p.m. Something in the back of my head told me to go to my friend's house, so I did. Sure enough, my wife's car has parked a couple of feet away from my friend's house. At this point, it was clear as day as to what was going on, and I hate to admit it, but I cried. Hard. After a few minutes, I decided to go in and see if this is really what was happening. I went in through the back door, which I knew would be open. I quietly made my way in, and I could hear my wife moaning. I was shaking. When I made it to the door of his bedroom, I could see through the creak. My wife, then over on his nightstand. I'll never get that image out of my head. I'm literally crying as I'm writing this down. I pushed the door wide open, and they both froze, staring at me. It took every ounce of my being not to beat the living hell out of Dave. I just walked away and got into my car. I could hear them scrambling, and my wife started screaming at me to stop and that she can explain. I didn't want to look at her. I don't know what I would have done, so I just drove away. I cried the entire drive home, and they were both spamming me with calls. I went to one of my college friends who have been there the past week or so. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't think of anything else. I informed my work of what was going on, and they were kind enough to give me time off. I've been getting phone calls from both Dave and Sue, as well as both our families. I let my family know I was all right and would be back soon, but I haven't responded to anyone else ever since. This hurts so bad. I'm trying to be strong, but my resolve is wavering. How can someone you loved so selfishly do this? I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this? Please help me. Just when you thought there wasn't any more, there's an update. When I looked back on the marriage, and most of it was filled with little else but happy memories, which is why I was trying so hard to find a reason to stay. However, when I started thinking about her cheating, how she and Dave gaslit me and made me question my sanity, the only thing I felt was rage. The deeper I looked, the angrier I got. I will never forget how angry Sue would get when I questioned her on where she'd been and home late, or the disgusted look Dave gave me when I asked him, man to man, if there was anything going on between him and my wife. The cheating was bad enough, and even worse was that it was with my best friend. But the gaslighting? The freaking gaslighting? I will never get over it. Fair enough. I was played like the fool I was. But it takes a special kind of person to lie so effortlessly and so well. I don't know how they were able to flip the switch like that. I remember one night when she came home late, about 2 days before I found out. She was telling me how much she loved me and how horny she was when she was driving home thinking about me. Now I am almost certain she had come home from Dave's because she wasn't wearing any panties. She had sex with both of us back to back. I freaking kissed her. This whole situation made me feel like a wimp. How could I have let them walk all over me like that? I feel so emasculated. The more I reflected, the more I got the urge to head over to Dave's. But I couldn't. There is no justice for me, not with our justice system. They get to torment me, assault me mentally, but if I retaliate, I am the one who gets put in jail for who knows how long. I spoke with my lawyer about this, and she urged me not to do anything stupid. Not only would I go to jail, but I would jeopardize my chances in the divorce proceedings. She suggested I see a therapist, but I don't want to. I don't see the need. I was still getting spammed with emails from Sue, and they were just making me angrier. She was still spewing the same nonsense as before, and how miserable her life would be without me. She even had the nerve to send me Bible verses on forgiveness. If I matter that much, why do it? I started to go to work again because I wanted to be busy. Being distracted has really helped me cope better, and I don't drink as much as I was at the beginning. One day while at work, I received a letter from Sue. I wanted to just throw it away, but I decided to read it. In it, she talked about her individual counseling and how it helped her discover some underlying issues she was having with herself. The biggest of all being her low self-esteem. She explained that the discrepancy in our attractiveness made her feel very self-aware and that deep down, she wanted to feel desired by someone other than me. According to her, her sister has always been much prettier than her, and this contributed to her low self-esteem. She said that even though she knew I was attracted to her and that I made her feel beautiful, she sought that validation from someone else. She apologized again and said it wasn't an excuse, but that she was simply looking for a way to make sure it never happens again. Should I decide to give her another chance? She then proceeded to ask if we could try marriage counseling to work things out. I still didn't respond to anything she or her family sent me at this point, so I just ignored it. Anyway, I started the divorce proceedings, and the first order of business was splitting our finances, and unfortunately, I couldn't untangle myself from her without her consent. We each have separate accounts, as well as a joint savings account, and unfortunately, I can't take what I'm entitled to from it without her. Even though I make significantly more than she does and have contributed the most of the money in that account, I'll probably have to split it with her 50-50, so I just proceeded with filing the divorce papers. She was served a few weeks ago, and then the crap show started. The very day she was served, she showed up in my apartment with the divorce petition in her hands. I don't know how she found out where I was. We just stared at each other for what felt like forever, and all the pain from that night came back. All the emotions I felt returned with renewed vigor. I almost teared up again, but I didn't. She looked like she had been crying, and she rushed towards me and tried to give me a hug. I gently pushed her away, and then somehow made her hysterical. She started shouting, asking why I was giving up on us so easily, and if we could just talk it out. At this point, I figured I just wanted to get away from her. Looking at her gave me a wave of different emotions, so I wanted to get away before I did or said anything I would regret. I tried going back to my car, and she threw herself on the top of the hood. I asked her what she wanted. She said she just wanted to talk things through, that we couldn't end our marriage in such a manner without at least clearing the air. I relented, because she was clearly not taking no for an answer and was making a scene. We got into my apartment, and I just sat down and listened to what she had to say. Again, she said she would do anything to save our marriage, that she doesn't love Dave, that she's sorry. She said she did some research on how we can move forward and suggest that a trial separation. In this separation, she said I could date whoever I wanted, that I should hold off on the divorce, and at the very least give her the chance to mend our friendship and then our relationship as husband and wife. She suggested a lot of other crazy stuff like a one-sided open marriage in my favor, tried showing me stories of other couples who have survived infidelity, and even suggested that we should just move to a different state, or even a different country, just the two of us. That part kind of hurt me, because we had spoken about moving and starting our family not too long before all this crap happened. When she was done, we just sat there in silence, again just staring at each other, and then I asked her why. Why him? Why cheat on me with him, and then come back, only after I caught her? She started sobbing really hard when I asked all these questions. She said she felt really guilty even during the acts, but that she didn't know how to stop, that she was so deep in the affair that she didn't think of the consequences and what she was going to lose. She said that the counseling made her realize that she probably would have cheated on me at some point, if not with Dave, then with someone else. This was supposedly because of the same underlying issues that she was unaware of. I asked her if she loved Dave, and she promised me she didn't love him, but they hadn't spoken since I left, and that she doesn't even know where he is now, that she loved only me, and would do anything to make up for what she has done to us. I asked her if she had ever cheated on me before all of this, and she swore on her dead father that this was the first and last time. I asked her who else knew about her and Dave. She hesitated and said only her sister, but that she only knew about it a few days before I found out. She implored her to end it and come clean to me. You guys who suggested that the sister knew were spot on. I also asked her why she was begging, why she didn't just leave to be with Dave. I asked her if she was only doing this because she felt like it was the right thing to do, and not because she actually wanted to be with me. She answered saying that she was doing it because she loves me, and because she knows she made some horrible choices. We talked for a long time. A lot of crying on her end, but not for me. I had cried enough when I first found out and didn't have any more tears to shed over this. Then I asked her if there was anything else she wanted to tell me, if there was anything else she was keeping a secret. She started sobbing again and asked me not to get angry. I got really nervous when she said that. She started crying for a bit before I urged her to just say it because she was making me uneasy. Then it came out. She said she found out she was pregnant not long after I had left, and that she got an abortion because she wasn't sure who the father was. She said she thought if it turned out to be Dave's, there would be no room for reconciliation, and she felt she had to do it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was in shock, and she started begging even more not to let this be the end of our relationship. I just went numb. I asked her to leave, and she begged me to stay, that we still needed to talk. All this begging was simply infuriating, coupled with the news I just heard. I asked her how far along she was when she found out she was pregnant, and she said a few weeks. Then it hit me. Wait, you said in an email that you only started having sex with Dave about a week before I found out. Was that a lie? She nodded. She freaking nodded. She explained that she only said that because she didn't want to hurt me with the details and was trying to minimize it. She confessed that it was physical for less than a month. She tried to console me, but I pushed her away. I asked her to leave and never come back. She tried saying something, but I just started yelling at her to leave. She asked if we could talk again once I processed everything, and I refused. Told her I had found a job in another state, and I would be moving as soon as the divorce was underway. In our state, there was a 2-month cool-off period after you file. I had already planned on doing this and was just finalizing everything before I resigned from my current job. I had already given my boss a notice at that point. When she heard this, it was more of the same crying and pleading like before. I told her to leave, or I would call the police. She reluctantly left, and I just lay on the floor wondering where I went wrong. How did my marriage get to this point in such a short period of time? I just couldn't understand it. I was somewhat sure of the divorce before, but after she and I spoke, I was now more sure of my decision than ever before. I ignored all efforts on Sue's end for contact again. However, a few days ago, this was on Thursday, I received a phone call from my mom that Sue was in the hospital. Apparently, she was hospitalized for a drug overdose. This all felt like a nightmare. I still don't know how to process all of this. Why is all of this happening? I visited Sue in the hospital, and she seemed to be okay, but she was checked into a psych ward. That's where things are at now. I still have no idea why she would do this, and the time I visited her, she was asleep. It hurts, because I still love her, and right now, I'm just happy she's okay. I haven't been thinking of the divorce given what's going on right now. How do I even proceed? There's probably a lot more important details I'm leaving out, but adding them will just make this unbearably long. I just need suggestions on what I should do next.
My husband caught me cheating, exposed video proofs, and shattered my life in front of family and kids. I thought I'd arrive early at the lawyer's office, but when my lawyer and I got there, Dave and his lawyer were already in the conference room. Seeing him with an attractive woman triggered my usual jealous reaction, making me feel somewhat inferior to him. Deep down, at 48, he was more handsome than at 20, tall and muscular, owning a successful business, and leading the local chamber of commerce. I shuddered at the thought that if today didn't go well, I might never feel his comforting arms again. Dave barely acknowledged me as I followed my lawyer into the room. My face turned pale when the red-haired lawyer reached out to reassure him. I interpreted it as her wanting to quickly finish the meeting to pursue him. I knew from experience that she would enjoy it, as my husband was skilled and knew how to use his charm. Dave smiled at her but remained neutral when he looked at me. Frustrated by Dave's determination not to talk to me, I was forced to attend the meeting. While my lawyer chatted with the red-haired lawyer, I sat down. Dave took a folder from my large purse, opened it, and laid out the finished 2-page script. Seeing Dave smile faintly, I knew he was aware of my thorough preparation. He set up a laptop, plugged in speakers, and put a single sheet of paper next to it. Then, casually, he put his hands on the table and looked at me with a polite but insensitive face. No anger, no hate, no grief. I had prepared for this meeting for 3 days, knowing my script by heart. I used my knowledge of David Brown to appeal to his emotions. We gathered to discuss Mrs. Julianne Brown agreeing to sign a divorce petition if Dave listened to her for at least 1 hour. "If everyone is ready, I suggest the hour begins now," she said, turning the timer knob. It began to tick loudly, emphasizing the silence in the room. I was annoyed that Dave insisted on having lawyers present, instead of a private meeting. I planned to share my feelings for the next 45 minutes before making Dave admit to something justifying my inappropriate behavior. It's awkward with just the two of us, even more humiliating in front of strangers. Well, no point in dwelling on the negatives. I had no choice. Glancing at my unnecessary notes, I crossed my fingers, remembering my friend Sonia's advice. I cleared my throat. I expressed gratitude for Dave's willingness to meet with me today. I acknowledged my error and clarified that it wasn't related to his failure but rather my own self-centeredness. I had spent days reflecting on this, hoping that Dave would appreciate my honesty. I believed he desired to forgive me, and my speech aimed to offer the justification he needed. Contemplating what might happen if the kids were at home, I considered playing the Dave "you can't break up the family" card, confident it would succeed. Observing his reaction to my speech, I examined his face and was taken aback by his response. In the ensuing silence, Dave's expression remained neutral. He didn't even direct his gaze toward me. Methodically, he raised his pen and marked a check next to the first sentence in his notes. My first words almost completely confused me. I said exactly what he expected, shaking my confidence. In my arrogance, I forgot that not only had I come up with my argument based on 30 years of knowing him, but he had spent those 30 years looking back at me. I'm not ashamed to admit I was shocked. I emphasized the importance of sticking to the script, reiterating that the situation with Dave was a result of my own foolish and self-centered decisions. I conveyed the feelings of being lost without children, feeling aged, unattractive, and worthless. I explained that I met Jason while collaborating on a church committee, describing him as sophisticated and a skilled seducer who knew precisely which button to press and when. He began acting like a friend, listening to my problems after church meetings last year when you were frequently away. But one day, after a church meeting, Jason suggested going to a cafe, and unfortunately, I agreed. It all seemed innocent, and he appeared as a good friend, so I didn't realize he was adept at breaking through a woman's defenses. Well, from coffee shops, we progressed to restaurants where he complained about his wife. I know it's a cliché, but by then I trusted him. The restaurants became increasingly upscale, and the gifts he gave me became more enjoyable. Oh, Dave, you can't imagine how nice it is when a guy 15 years younger than you tries to win you over. But you'd be proud because 4 months ago he asked me to sleep with him, and I declined. I should have refused to meet him after that when his intentions were clear, but by then, I had become somewhat reliant on the effect his compliments and attention had on my ego and confidence. I fell silent and sniffled, wiping my eyes with the finger I had previously rubbed on an onion piece in my pocket. It stung so much that I didn't dare rub my other eye. One teary eye should have been enough. I stopped, started again, faltered, and hesitated. Oh, honey, I'm so ashamed that I didn't break up with him. He took me to a restaurant and bought a $1,300 bottle of Grange, even though he himself doesn't drink wine. Instead of wasting it, I drank almost all of it. I'm pretty sure that's what he wanted. I was too nervous to resist him. When we left the restaurant, he offered to take me home, and I foolishly agreed. Once in the driveway, he leaned over and kissed me, but I was too drunk to stop him. You know how I get after a couple of glasses of wine. Then he started touching my chest. At this point, my logic was completely broken, and I remember just thinking that I should move him out of the driveway so the neighbors wouldn't see us. For the same reason, I opened the garage door and forced him to park inside. I cheated a little by admitting that even in the car I thought Jason might be staying a while, and I certainly didn't want the neighbors to see a strange car in the driveway the next morning. But it was all a calculated risk on my part. I knew enough about men in general to understand that being betrayed was a major blow to a man's ego, and I wanted Dave to ensure that no one else ever found out about it. Well, except for 2 lawyers. Jason got out of the car as the garage door was closing and started kissing me again. As I said, I had already drunk most of the bottle of Grange and was ripe for plucking. He grabbed my key and led me inside. I took him to one of the spare bedrooms, and I will be ashamed of this until the day I die. I let him do whatever he wanted with me. I'm so sorry, Dave. My only saving grace was that I was composed enough with him to get him to put on a safe. After Jason came, I think we both fell asleep, I because I was drunk, and he because he must have been tired after a 4 or 5 month chase. I know for sure I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drunk and depressed. When I woke up, and I definitely would have kicked him to the curb immediately, instead, you entered the room and turned on the light. I have never been so ashamed in my life. The look of pain on your face just killed me. I realized how much misuse I caused to you and us with one simple mistake. With tears still flowing from one eye, I turned my pleading gaze to my husband. Having spent a lifetime together, I knew that I could read his expression like an open book and be able to judge how my request was going. Not true. His expression remained neutral. In fact, he didn't even look at me. Strange, but he was fiddling with the laptop in front of him. I thought he was writing notes until he clicked the link on his screen. A voice came from the speakers, my voice. Gee, don't kiss me, Eureka Beer. What about you? Rotten grape breath? What? I had one lousy glass of white. The audio clip stopped, and the room fell into a thunderous silence. I think that's how it was. The roaring sound in my head drowned out everything else. Yes, I felt embarrassed and humiliated when Dave walked in on me that night with Jason before lifting Jason by his hair and beating the crap out of his body. But that was insignificant compared to the fact that I had just been caught in a huge lie. This completely threw me off track. I was so confident that my script would work. My eyes darted around the room. Dave's lawyer smiled slightly. Mine looked slightly embarrassed. Dave just looked at me expectantly with that damn blank expression. Later, I will never understand why I didn't immediately realize what it all meant. What the heck? Dave had an audio recording of my meeting with Jason that night. Being wound up, it never occurred to me to follow the logic of this. Why does he need a voice recorder there if he didn't know in advance that he could record something? What else did we say? The silence stretched, uncomfortably for a long time, and I looked at the cryptic shard of my notes and, looking back, stupidly plunged into the script I'd prepared. I clung to him like a drowning man clings to debris. It was only once. It won't happen again, nothing like that. Please believe me. I just wasn't strong enough to resist him. But I wasn't so out of control that I wouldn't force him to use protection or let him take me on our bed. He wanted it, but I would never do that, no matter how drunk I was. We were in Megan's old room, right? Dave just looked at me sadly, and I didn't know what was worse, his sad face or his impassive one. He shook his head and turned to the computer. I felt, rather than heard, him double-click the icon, and I cringed. I just like to watch how you lie in front of me, full of desire. It is very hot, Jason's voice said. Then, once it was finished, another double-click, and Jason's voice came again. When can we have time in bed again, in your clueless husband's bed? It was so cool. This time, Dave clicked and ended the clip, then just looked at me silently, accusatory. What could I even say? Everything I had claimed was debunked, not by Dave, but by my own words. Protection? A one-time drunken mistake? Not getting close with my husband in our own bed? The whole thing crumbled as a lie in just 30 words. I stood, speechless. Though it was awkward, I looked at Dave for any clue. His neutral gaze revealed nothing. I noticed my lawyer checking her watch, making me focus on the ticking timer and realizing the 60 minutes I had to salvage my marriage were slipping away, and I admit, going terribly. I forced myself to suppress panic. Apologies for the lie, Dave, about it being the first time. I just didn't want to hurt you more than I already had. I thought if I could convince you it was a one-time thing, and for the exact reason I stated, you wouldn't be so offended. I stumbled back into silence. Should I now admit I had dated Jason several times a week for over 6 months? The trouble was, I didn't know what Dave knew. He had recorded conversations revealing the night he found us wasn't the first or only night, but what else did he know? Hiding the recorder where I usually met Jason hinted at suspicion of at least one more time. I just didn't know. However, I knew that if I was caught telling one more lie, it would all be over. Well, Juliana, it's time to be vague. Avoid details and stick to the facts. The truth is, Jason did seduce me, and it took a while. He has a thing for older women. It's true that being pursued by a man almost my kid's age gave me an ego boost. I admit it, I was weak. I thought about saying I used the master bed only once, the first time. It would be a lie, but would put me in a better light. But not knowing how long Dave knew about my extramarital activities held me back. I decided to stay silent on this. However, I couldn't remain silent on everything. Realizing I had limited time to rectify the situation, unsure of the best course of action, I turned my attention to my notes. I discarded the initial points after being exposed and focused on words highlighted in capital letters. I conveyed that I never ceased to love and respect Dave, emphasizing that I gave him no less love than I always had. I explained that Jason was an additional dimension that didn't diminish anything from my love for Dave, but rather added an overflowing quality, if I could describe it that way. When I fell silent, Dave redirected his gaze to his laptop screen, furrowed his brow, and appeared momentarily confused. However, he eventually relaxed again, listening to the recording, a continuation of the earlier soundtrack. I understood that Dave's frown indicated he was searching for an icon on the screen before realizing it was one of the open files. It would be better if he didn't grasp it, and he evidently started over, going back to the beginning of the video. I revisited Jason's question about being close in our marital bed like the first time. I cringed, knowing my words once again condemned me. I already told you never again, not after the last time. That night, Dave stepped out of the shower and inadvertently stepped on a large drop of white, for which I was grateful. Dave accepted my explanation about sneezing, attributing the drop to snot. Sinking lower into my seat, I anticipated the predictable words that would follow. Although I initially felt smug when I uttered them, that feeling dissipated. Distracting Dave by offering to clean his leg and doing it nicely diverted his attention, commenting, "You have to admit, doll, that your husband sometimes acts like an ignorant idiot." I found myself discussing how Jason and I had successfully evaded detection, such as when he had to hide in the closet when Dave came home early. Insulting? Yes. Dave is clueless. Initially, I found it sweet that he trusted me so much. Now, he's just an ignorant fool. Sometimes I wonder if we could have time in bed right here while he's in the room. The mocking tone made me realize I was rehashing an actual point. With these words and such a tone, I couldn't even convince myself I loved and respected my husband, let alone him. Again, confusion set in. Before this meeting, I convinced myself I loved and respected Dave. But after what I did and said, how is that possible? Steeped in the ticking, tense silence after the final nail in my coffin, Dave turned to look at me. I couldn't look him in the face, so I turned to his lawyer. The contempt on her face made me shut down. Any doubts that Dave was just another client to her vanished. I looked away from her and now looked at my lawyer. She too wasn't quick enough to hide her disdain. Here I am, fighting for my future, surrounded by people who think I'm something they stepped into at the dog park, and one of them should be on my side. My confidence dissipated like dew in the midday sun, and my self-esteem quickly followed suit. Perhaps that's why I revisited my notes and chose to adopt an offensive stance. I conveyed to Dave that over the last 6 months he had been paying me decreasing attention, taking me for granted, traveling for business more frequently, and seemingly distancing himself from me. All of this occurred simultaneously with the children leaving home, leaving me feeling lost. I expressed how he was never there when I needed him, failing to reassure me about my age and attractiveness or provide comfort in times of need. Pausing, I noticed Dave's eyes returning to his screen, and I cringed as his fingers danced, opening the selected file. It became apparent that Jason's words were from just after our second encounter, that fateful night, shortly before Dave reached a breaking point. Jason spoke about our recent lack of a bed life, expressing his desire for more frequent encounters. He mentioned a canceled trip and how I had requested him to limit Dave's diet. Jason explained that he only had the opportunity that night due to an urgent meeting Dave had to attend. He also expressed a wish for Dave to leave town more often. "Well, I want more," retorted an irritated Jason, to which the clip was once again interrupted. Ashamed, I lowered my eyes to the table, avoiding 3 judgmental glances, and recalled my emotional state during the last conversation. The truth was that the novelty of having a lover, even one as young and energetic as Jason, was beginning to wear off. Jason and my actions in betraying my husband had caused me to lose respect for Dave, and it was at least beginning to prick my conscience. Loss of respect, more than anything else, I think, was the reason for my emotional distance from my husband. Even as I prepared for this meeting, fully intending to blame him for pulling away from me, I realized that it was a lie. To allow myself to continue to betray him, I emotionally divorced Dave. Cutting him off in bed was an easy decision, simply because Dave's lovemaking was so different from Jason's impatience that it was impossible to confuse the two. This reinforced to me that what I was doing was very, very wrong. So I began to reject my husband's advances. Well, he pressed for a while, then he stopped. I suddenly realized that it should have been screaming for my attention months ago. Dave suddenly gave up his bed life around the same time he began working longer hours and going away more often. At the time, I thought he was also emotionally distancing himself from me. I closed my eyes, now completely confused about who was distancing himself from who, and then something clicked. Dave must have known for a long time. That's why he knew he had to hide the recorder in Megan's room. Crap. My entire approach to this meeting was to minimize my crime, heal Dave's wounded pride, eat some humble pie, all to get my life back and the future I so desperately wanted. I thought I was calming a recently wounded bull, but if I was right about him knowing at least 2 weeks before he discovered, nay, confronted, me, then he was a lot more cunning than I thought. And I was wasting my time appealing to his emotions. In short, I had no idea what to do. I'm much better when I plan than when I'm spontaneous, hence 2 pages of notes. But I had to do something. Time was running out. The ticking of the clock confirmed this. In desperation, I took my notes and began to look for hope. The pounding in my head made absorbing the words a very slow process. Nothing jumped out. Then I realized that the recordings were a red herring because the game had changed so much. If Dave knew I was leaving for a while, what was his state of mind? He, of course, was offended by my betrayal, but most of all, he was worried about my motivation. Wasn't I satisfied with the quantity and quality of his lovemaking? Did I find him boring and want to explore my kinky side? Did I love Jason? Was I really going to run away with him? I could correct these fears and doubts. I risked looking into those expressionless eyes, wondering if I should risk lying again. If only I could remember what else Jason and I talked about that fateful night. If only I could be sure that this was the only night Dave had recorded. Of course, the sequence had to be suspect. Install recorders, resist. He could not have been sure of this for long, he just wasn't a good actor. I desperately wanted to convince him of the truth. I still loved and respected him. My desperate desire that he would not abandon me proved this. It was far beyond my fear of losing my very comfortable lifestyle. But how do I convince him that I respect him after we've all heard me call him a goofy in front of my lover? What's the point of trying to justify denigrating him to my lover as a sop to my conscience and creating a common bond between Jason and me? Nothing, that I could see. The same applied to love for him. If I had caught him deceiving me, wild horses would not have been able to draw the conclusion out of me that he still loved me. So, convincing him that I loved and respected him would take time. I had won time by convincing him not to insist that I immediately sign the divorce papers. But how long does that damn timer keep ticking to convince him of this? One thing was for sure, my next few sentences were going to score points. Lots of points. Summoning my courage, I directed my gaze across the table at Dave. I conveyed to him that I understood he perceived a loss of my love and respect, reassuring him that it was not the case. I affirmed my love for him and our life together, expressing a sincere desire to spend the remainder of my days solely with him. I acknowledged the gravity of my actions, admitting that Jason was a distraction and that I didn't love him. Furthermore, I assured Dave that running away with Jason was never my intention. I admitted the wrongdoing of my actions, particularly in response to Jason's proposal to limit our closeness. Reflecting on the situation, I confessed that I didn't know why I went through with it, especially after convincing myself that I was merely providing Jason with an excess that Dave couldn't handle. I highlighted that Jason lacked the stamina and experience that Dave possessed, and my actions were driven solely by lust and selfishness. Although the physical aspect brought a temporary satisfaction, it was devoid of any genuine emotion. I clarified that I didn't engage in the same perversions with Jason that I had denied Dave throughout the years. Time seemed to slow down, mirroring the pace of those on the verge of passing away. The disintegration of my marriage unfolded in slow motion, with everyone around me moving at a normal speed. To my left, my lawyer expressed her disdain, tossing her pen on the table and turning to me. It was evident that, in this moment, I couldn't even pay someone to be on my side. Dave's lawyer leaned to the side to gain a better view of the laptop screen, revealing that Dave was not playing sound files as I had assumed, but rather video clips. This realization intensified the gravity of the situation. Dave's lawyer grabbed his hand in a show of support, and though he wasn't looking at me, his reaction conveyed a profound hurt, as if the man meant to support him had betrayed him. I witnessed a fleeting expression of devastation on his face, and a single tear rolled down from the eye closest to me. I questioned whether he was truly suffering or if he had steeled himself by fixating on the screen. Amidst the chaos, a few irrelevant facts registered in my mind. The recording was made at least 3 weeks before the collision, meaning Dave had been witnessing my betrayal for some time, enough to discern a pattern. Silence enveloped us as the speakers played, the heat that had once suffused the room now transforming into a sense of dirtiness, sloppiness, and tastelessness. I focused on the table, and my lawyer laid out the divorce papers before me. Helpless, I couldn't counter the vile behavior that Dave had uncovered. With unparalleled ease, he dismantled all my rationalizations, minimizations, and feeble attempts at reconciliation. It was over. Dave, acting as an orchestra conductor, didn't utter a word today. Instead, he indicated the section of the orchestra he wanted to play next, using his skills and talents to execute a silent symphony of separation. No, it wasn't Dave. I ascended the scaffold myself, blindfolded, and with a noose in hand, kicking the lever. Dave simply erected the scaffold and departed as soon as he played the last clip. He knew precisely what I was going to say, leaving me with no chance at redemption. And when I came up with my arguments, based on my close knowledge of him after observing him for 3 decades, I had forgotten that he also looked at me for the same amount of time. Looking back at me with his smart, penetrating eyes, the shame and humiliation were unbearable and finally caused me to run away. Escape was what I needed. Running back. To the house that was still my home, at least until Dave got the eviction notice that was part of the agreement, and escaping to the children, who I hope will never know and will continue to love me unconditionally. The only way to salvation lay through a receipt. With the loss of most of my life, I took the pen, signed the 2 agreements, and threw it away in one fluid motion. I was surprised Dave's business wasn't worth more, but that's what my lawyer's assessment found. And of course, Dave had plenty of time to hide most of it. By that time, the last recording had thankfully ended, and the ticking silence returned. My lawyer took the signed papers, handing me a copy while placing the rest in her briefcase. She left the room, leaving me seated, frozen, torn between the desire to run and the wish to convey a positive message. I longed for an ember of hope, something to convince myself that there might be a chance to rekindle the flame someday, to let Dave know that I still cared about his well-being. The sharp sound of an alarm clock disrupted my thoughts, prompting me to stand up and deliver my positive phrase. The jackal, holding Dave's hand with both hands, urged him not to seek revenge on Jason, expressing her fear of never forgiving herself if he ended up in prison. Dave's response was another damning video, thankfully not featuring my voice but that of another woman, speaking in an almost shrill tone. She mentioned the consequences Jason would face if her brothers got to him first, identifying herself as Mrs. Jason. Initially, I had thought Jason's silence after the beating reflected fear on his part, but now I pondered that being divorced and penniless might be a fitting end for the scammer. The burden on my conscience grew heavier as I considered that he might die because he had been involved with me. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't bring myself to look Dave in the face. Whether he had his expressionless face, or whether he was laughing or crying, it all pained me. A constant reminder of the misuse I had caused this good man. He had lost everything except my house and money, and suffered a tremendous emotional blow, all at my hands. I deserved every bit of his anger. Through tears, I managed to squeeze out a feeble, "Goodbye, dear," as I shuffled toward the door. My pathetic attempt to salvage my old life was discarded, akin to a plague beetle. Perhaps my daughter Megan would visit me while I drowned myself in oblivion, or if she wasn't available, then my son Joel. Just as I began to push the door, voices behind me caught my attention. Another damn recording. An excited young male voice accused cheater. A very familiar female voice intervened, asking, "Are you sure, Dad?" "I think I'll drink alone today," was Dave's quiet reply. My wife cheated, got pregnant, and wanted me to raise the affair baby, but I took my revenge. At 48, I sat in my office overlooking the Pacific, contemplating my company's offer. Accepting it would net me about $24 million, making me incredibly wealthy. Despite this, I felt miserable. Professionally, I was successful, but personally, my life was a mess. My name is Jerry Ford, Jerome, not Gerald like the president. I came from a blue-collar, lower-middle-class family and was a screw-up in high school because I found it boring. My guidance counselor even suggested I drop out and find a job. I was a pain in the back. Somehow I graduated high school, probably because they wanted to get rid of me. The Vietnam War was raging, and I enlisted in the Army for 3 years, eager to serve. My dad, an electrician, thought it would help me mature and learn a trade. To my surprise, I thrived in basic training. The discipline and physical demands appealed to me, and I excelled. This led to volunteering for Ranger training, a grueling 2-month program at Fort Benning, Georgia, preparing for Vietnam. I wasn't a big guy, just under 6 feet and 170 lbs, but I stayed in shape by swimming. The training honed my body and survival skills. 2 months later, I was in Vietnam, which was far from pleasant. I spent over a year and a half there until shrapnel wounded me, damaging my spine and bladder. After months in a veterans hospital, I was discharged. Fortunately, I was incontinent, and my limp is barely noticeable today. The inability to have children didn't bother me much then, but would haunt me later. At 20, out of the Army with no real skills except combat, I was back home, unsure of my next steps. My dad found a VA-sponsored counseling program at Drexel University. After a day of testing, Dr. Cypress suggested I study engineering based on my aptitudes. Despite my poor high school performance, he convinced me I could succeed in college. I enrolled at Drexel, majoring in electrical engineering, making my parents proud. Around that time, I got a call from my old buddy, Ben. "Line Jerry, it's Ben. I'm out of the Army. Ben, it's great to hear from you. How come you got out early? Where are you? How did you get my number?" I was excited to hear his voice. "I lost a leg to a mine, but the prosthesis is great, and I get around fine. I called your folks for your number. I'm in California now, studying architecture at Caltech." "I'm going to be an architect, Jerry," I laughed. Ben was probably the smartest guy in our unit. "That's fantastic, Ben. I'm really happy for you. My folks must have told you I'm studying engineering." "Yeah, I heard. Can you believe it? Us becoming professionals, you an engineer and me an architect?" We laughed and talked for another half hour, promising to keep in touch. I decided not to commute from home, and using my GI Bill, a small medical pension, and money my folks saved, I got a tiny studio apartment near school. It had a bed, some chairs, a sofa, a kitchenette, and a small bathroom, but it was enough for me. I set up a study area with a desk and a used computer and focused on my studies, knowing my future depended on it. I could walk to class and take the streetcar to visit my folks. The first 2 years flew by, and I was surprised to find I did well in my exams. I was serious about becoming an engineer, which left little time for a social life. I made some casual friends, and we occasionally went out for beer or pizza. One Friday, a classmate, Carl, invited me to a sorority party at Penn. I decided to go, and that night changed my life. I met Kimberly, who seemed like a rich girl with her stylish clothes and diamond earrings. My contempt showed, and she sensed it. Feeling guilty, I quickly got a beer. We eventually talked about marriage, and I worried about how she'd react to my sterility. One day, Kim confessed, "Jerry, I love you and want to be with you forever, but I don't want children. I wouldn't make a good mother." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'll understand if you want to break up." I hugged her. "Kim, if you don't want children, then I don't either." My sterility was now irrelevant, and I didn't even need to mention it. Ironically, Kim was lax about taking her birth control pills, often skipping days. It never caused any problems for us, reinforcing her belief that missing a few days didn't matter. In our case, it didn't. "Jerry," Kim said one afternoon, "I think it's time for you to meet my parents. They want to meet you." I knew this was coming, but I dreaded it. I felt sick, convinced they'd see me as unworthy. The meeting was set for Sunday. I looked into Kim's family. They were high society. Bernard Van Horn owned a huge construction firm and was worth hundreds of millions. His wife, Catherine, came from old money. I felt out of place. Her dad sent a black Lincoln Town car to pick us up. I was in a foul mood, but Kim reassured me. We arrived at their large, impeccably maintained colonial house. Kim led me inside, calling out for her parents. To my surprise, they were incredibly welcoming, treating me like family. Catherine was polite, but with a hint of caution. She was about 55, blonde, blue-eyed, and youthful-looking for her age, probably mid-40, I thought. If Kim ages like this, I can live with that. Bernie insisted I call him by his first name, which felt odd given his wealth and stature. He was tall, distinguished, and very rich, but immediately took a liking to me, interested in my background and studies. As we left, he said, "Jerry, I'm impressed. Keep up your studies. I can always use a good engineer." He laughed and slapped my back, telling Kim, "You gotta keep her." On the ride back, Kim snuggled into me, relieved. I sighed, glad it was over, but now thinking about Kim meeting my folks. The contrast between her family's estate and my parents' South Philly row house would be stark, but I knew my parents would welcome her warmly. Kim's visit to my parents. Home went well. She was surprised by their modest living conditions, but handled it gracefully. Occasionally, I saw a look in her eyes that unsettled me, but I knew she wouldn't look down on anyone. She and my mom bonded in the kitchen over a pot roast recipe, even though I doubted Kim could cook. My dad took me outside and said, "Jerry, Kim seems great and loves you, but she's used to privilege. Engineering pays well, but maybe not enough for her expectations. Just think about it." He patted my shoulder, and we went back inside. When we were in the front parlor, my dad brought out wine glasses and made an announcement. "Jerry, Kim, a toast to your happiness. May your lives together be long and joyful. And now, we have sold the house and are moving to Florida. We bought a small villa on the West Coast, and I've got a part-time job there. Retired of the cold and moving by the end of the month. Cheers." I was stunned but happy for them, joking that they should keep the second bedroom ready for our visits. I noticed a look in Kim's eyes but ignored it. Kim suggested we combine what her parents paid for her lodging with my rent and get a real apartment together. It made sense, so we rented a nice place nearby. Kim insisted she needed a car for school, so her dad bought her a BMW. Our senior year went well. Kim was busy with her studies and wedding plans, while I focused on maintaining high grades. Despite our busyness, we spent less time together. 2 months before graduation, Kim came home with exciting news. "Jerry, I got a part-time job starting next week. If it goes well, it could become full-time after graduation." She was thrilled. She'd be a probationary assistant editor at a large publishing house in Center City. I whined a bit about our lack of time together. "Geez, Kim, we barely see each other now. It'll be worse." "I know, but this is a golden opportunity. Please be happy for me," she pleaded. I forced a smile and encouraged her. "You'll be great, honey. They'll love you." She danced around the apartment while I felt a sense of foreboding. It actually worked out. Kim worked a couple of evenings when I had late classes, so we didn't lose much time together. The semester flew by, and suddenly our wedding day arrived. The ceremony was in a ritzy hotel with over guests, but only a few were my family and friends. I felt like I was in a haze, letting events carry me through. That evening, Kim's father, Bernie, took me aside to a room off the ballroom. "Jerry, I know you have resumes out, but I want you to consider working for me. I need to bolster my technical department, and I want you to train with Donna, our head electrical engineer. This is a real job with room for advancement, and I'll pay you more than anyone else." He grinned, and I recognized this was a great opportunity. We shook hands, agreeing that Kim and I would make it on our own. And that was our contract. My parents gave us a beautiful sterling silver service for 12, which probably strained their budget. My in-laws gifted us a 10-day vacation in Jamaica. I felt awkward about them paying for our honeymoon but didn't want to refuse. I started feeling uneasy about the Van Horns' influence on our relationship. Kim and I had discussed this, and she knew I wanted us to be independent. She brushed off my concerns, but they were real to me. Our biggest disagreement was where to live after graduation and our wedding. Kim wanted to buy an apartment in a high-rise in Center City, close to her job and the Van Horn building where I would work. I insisted we rent a place we could afford and buy later when we were financially ready. Kim was furious that I wouldn't accept help from her parents. I made it clear that we had to make it on our own. She eventually agreed, though grudgingly. We found a nice 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment near our jobs. Kim had her car, and I could take a streetcar to work. It was convenient. We went into debt for furniture, but I managed Kim's spending, and we furnished the place nicely. Bernie kept his word, and my job was demanding but rewarding. I worked closely with Don Malone, an experienced engineer who taught me a lot. I quickly realized that college was just the beginning of my learning. I often stayed late, eager to learn as much as possible. Kim was also dedicated to her job, advancing from assistant to full-fledged editor within 2 years. She earned good money, and we saved for a place of our own. Kim still wanted a luxury apartment in Center City and often criticized our current place, calling it squalid. Once her attitude strained our relationship. I stayed in touch with Ben Klein, who kept urging me to move to California, but I was content where I was and knew Kim wouldn't want to move. Ben was persistent, but I had to laugh at his efforts. One Friday evening, I had made reservations at a fancy restaurant, had 24 roses in a crystal vase, and a velvet box with diamond earrings for Kim. It was our second wedding anniversary, and I bet she thought I had forgotten since she hadn't mentioned it. The phone ringing interrupted my thoughts. "Jerry," Kim said, "I'm really sorry, but I'll be late tonight. We have a million things to do for Paul's new novel, and I'll be here for a few more hours. I'll grab something to eat and see you around 10. She hung up before I could reply. I looked at the roses on the sideboard, wondering if she even remembered it was our anniversary. Her job seemed more important. We had both been so focused on work that we neglected our marriage. It felt like we were just roommates. Kim had been consumed by the launch of Paul LLL's novel. She was excited, but I grew tired of hearing about him. I met him at a reception months ago and found him arrogant. Kim was wearing a revealing black dress that night, which made me uneasy when she introduced me to LLL. He tried to hurt me with a handshake, but I quickly put him in his place. He sneered, calling me the engineer, and laughed. Kim looked embarrassed. The rest of the evening, she stayed by his side, and he kept giving me challenging looks. A week later, Kim stopped talking about LLL and the project. When I brought him up, she changed the subject. I started feeling suspicious and paranoid, but I tried to dismiss it. Our marriage was on autopilot and Kim was distant. We hadn't been carnal in weeks. A week before our anniversary, I decided to surprise Kim at work and take her to dinner. I went to Crown Publishing and accidentally got off on the executive floor, where I ran into James Frost, the VP. "Jerry, good to see you. It's been a while," he said, patting my shoulder. "Hi, Jim. I got off on the wrong floor. I'm here to take my wife to dinner. Hopefully she's not too busy with the Lavelle thing." "Oh, no. That's over. Paul's still in the VIP apartment upstairs, but the book's at the printer. Go grab Kim. She deserves a good dinner." He smiled and walked away. I went to Kim's office and saw her in the hall. She looked startled. "Jerry, what are you doing here?" she blurted. "Hi, Kim. I thought we could have dinner out tonight. It's been a while, and I thought we could spend some time together." I saw a flash of annoyance in her eyes. "I can't, Jerry. I'm busy with Paul's novel. Please be patient. This will be over soon, I promise." She patted my cheek and returned to her office. I left, realizing it was almost 11. Kim's promise to be home by 10 was like her other empty promises. I threw the roses, vase and all, into the trash and tossed the earrings into my desk drawer. I went to bed but couldn't sleep, suspecting she was having an affair with LLL. When she came home around 1 a.m., freshly showered, I pretended to be asleep. Her behavior confirmed my suspicions. The next morning, I went to the office to think. I knew my marriage was over and needed evidence of her infidelity. I found a private investigation firm near Van Horn Construction and set up an appointment with Marge DeMarco. At her office, Marge listened to my suspicions and explained the difficulty of gathering legal evidence from the VIP apartment. "Marge, I don't care about legality. I just want confirmation," I insisted. She looked at me with pity. "Okay, Jerry, give us a couple of weeks. Here's our fee information and contract. Sign it and mail it back with a check. We'll start Monday." I nodded, shook her hand, and left feeling a bit better for taking action. When I got home, Kim was in the kitchen, furious. God damn it, Jerry, where did you go? Do you remember it's our anniversary? Did you get me a card or make any gesture? I stood silently, realizing she was trying to deflect the blame. Kimberly, I replied calmly, today is the 11th. Our anniversary was yesterday. The roses I got you are in the trash. I canceled our dinner reservations. If you look in my desk, you'll find the gift I got you. Clearly, last night was more important, considering you stayed out until almost 1 a.m. She looked frightened, her eyes darting everywhere, avoiding my gaze. She pouted but tried to collect herself. I'm sorry, Jerry, she said, sitting on the sofa. I don't know where I am half the time. This campaign has me frazzled. It's over, Jerry. The campaign is finally over. Let's try to forget the past couple of months and work on our marriage. She didn't know that I knew the project had ended long ago. Her guilt was evident. I didn't escalate the situation, but the tension remained all week. Kim was home every evening around 5, indicating her affair with LLL had ended, but it was too late for me. The trust was gone, and our marriage felt like a charade. A few days later, Ben Klein called. Jerry, have you thought about moving out here? The opportunities are unlimited. We could use a good electrical engineer. Ben had been trying to get me to move for a while. It's an idea, Ben. I'm not sure, but we can talk about it again. A few days later, Marge DeMarco called me to her office. Jerry, I have some news, but I don't know if you'll be happy. We haven't found any evidence to confirm your suspicions, so I'm refunding a portion of our fee. Our inquiries into Paul LLL's background revealed he's a womanizer, with 3 settled maltreatment complaints and 2 divorces linked to him. I'm sorry we couldn't be more help. I was disappointed but resigned. I called John Kramer, an attorney, and made an appointment for 10 days later. It was time to end this. Meanwhile, Kim and I tiptoed around each other. A couple of days before my appointment, Kim rushed into the house agitated. Jerry, sit down. I need to talk to you. I know we didn't want children, but I'm pregnant. We're going to be parents. Jerry, please don't be angry. Please be happy for us. She looked at me, anxiety written all over her face. I was stunned, completely floored. For a moment, I couldn't even think. Then the absurdity hit me. Kim had always been careless with her birth control pills, and now she was pregnant with LLL's child, trying to convince me it was mine. I felt a mix of rage and devastation. I realized she had betrayed me, and it left me feeling empty and cold inside. I'll pack a few things and leave. I'll get the rest later when you're not here, I said. Kim looked frightened and started to cry. I'm sorry, Jerry, you don't know how sorry I am. Why, Kim, was our marriage so unimportant to you? I asked softly. She looked at me with watery eyes. I asked myself that too. Maybe it was the excitement, the glamour. I have no excuses. I was weak and foolish. I let myself be seduced by Paul and the job. I didn't realize how deep I was until it was too late, she said, crying. I'm so ashamed. Lying to you about the baby was despicable. I'm truly sorry. Is there any way? She asked, already knowing the answer. No, I replied. I have an appointment with John Kramer. Get a lawyer. We'll split what we have and finalize the divorce without problems. I packed a bag and left. Kim was still crying as I walked out. Telling Bernie Van Horn was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Why, Jerry? Why haven't I treated you well? You're like a son to me, Bernie said with tears in his eyes. Bernie, I can't give you details, but Kim will explain. She left me with no choice. You've been like a second father to me, and I'm grateful, but I can't explain more, I said, struggling to hold back my emotions. Bernie seemed to understand and placed his hand on my shoulder. Okay, Jerry, do what you have to do. Promise you'll let me help you whenever I can, he said. I nodded and left. I spent the next week at a Hilton, trying to process everything. I filed for divorce, knowing it wouldn't be contested. Realizing there was nothing left for me here, I called Ben Klein and was on a plane to LA within a week. Ben had already submitted my resume to his company, and I started the job a few days after arriving. I stayed with Ben and his wife Rachel for a couple of weeks until I found an apartment near work. Rachel, who I'd only talked to on the phone before, was warm and welcoming. She made me feel more than just a guest in their home. She was about 53, beautifully built with dark hair and brown eyes. She became a special friend, and I was happy for both Ben and Rachel. Weeks passed, and I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. The nights were tough, filled with dark dreams and memories of Kim. Sometimes I drank too much and let my anger out by smashing things, then passed out on the sofa. I missed the Kim I had married, not the one who betrayed me. I wondered if her infidelity was partly my fault, but I couldn't forgive her or accept the child. Ben and Rachel kept me sane. They invited me to spend weekends at their place, go camping, or set me up on blind dates, which I avoided. I spent many weekends with them, finding some peace by their pool. Bernie and Catherine Van Horn also called occasionally, never mentioning Kim, just checking in. Their concern touched me. Things got weird at Ben and Rachel's. They were like family, but Rachel's bikinis got skimpier, and awkward encounters happened often. Rachel would be in the hall in her underwear, or a barely there bikini. I felt uncomfortable but didn't want to make a move on Rachel. One Saturday, Ben went to get beer, insisting I stay. I came out of the bathroom and saw Rachel in a short silk robe, wide open with nothing underneath. She took my hand and led me to the patio. "Rachel, tie your robe. Ben will be home soon," I stammered. She ignored me and said, "Don't worry about Ben. We need to talk." She sat across from me, her robe open. "Jerry, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're not the only guy who got crapped on. You can't avoid women forever." I blushed, panicking. Rachel stood, let the robe fall, and took my hand. "Don't worry, Jerry. I'm not going to screw you. Ben and I thought this might snap you out of your depression." She put the robe back on and tied it. "We did this out of love and affection for you." "Holy crap, Rachel, what's Ben going to think of this?" I asked, worried. Rachel smiled. "Don't worry, Jerry. Ben knows exactly what I intended to do and he agreed. He trusts you with his life, and he feels the same about me. He thought this might help you get back in the game." Ben returned later, grinning. His humor eased my guilt. To defend myself, I started accepting blind dates they set up. Surprisingly, many of the women were nice, and I enjoyed the dates, even though I knew they wouldn't go anywhere. I still loved Kim and missed her terribly. Letting go of that love was my biggest obstacle. What kept me grounded was the companionship of Ben and Rachel. They constantly invited me over and encouraged me to date. Spending weekends by their pool helped me relax. Bernie and Catherine Van Horn also kept in touch, showing genuine concern, so I started to move on. I joined a health club, took a cooking class, and even considered joining a library group. Ben and Rachel were happy I was back in the game. I kept busy with work and occasional dates, slowly recovering from my breakup with Kim. 2 years passed since I moved to the West Coast. I operated in a semi-fog, going through the motions. Then my world changed again. One Thursday evening, my mom called, crying. My dad had a massive stroke and died. I felt lightheaded but knew I had to stay strong. I called Ben. "Ben, my dad had a massive stroke. He died. I need you to contact personnel and get me a leave of absence." "Of course, Jerry. Don't worry about anything here. Just take care of your family," Ben responded sympathetically. I packed and was on a plane to Tampa a few hours later. I landed early the next morning and rented a car. At the house, I found a note from Mrs. Simmons, the neighbor, asking me to call her. "Mrs. Simmons, this is Jerry Ford. I just got your note," she interrupted. "Jerry, your mom had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. She'll be fine, so stay calm. I'll be right over." 5 minutes later, Mrs. Simmons or Katie arrived and explained everything. My mom had experienced neck and arm pains, and Katie called emergency. Mom was taken to the ER, examined, and scheduled for bypass surgery later in the week. I immediately headed for the door when Katie stopped me. She spoke calmly. "Jerry, wait for me. Give me 15 minutes to get ready, and I'll go with you instead of giving you directions to the hospital." I paused, feeling relief as she hugged me. "Don't worry, Jerry. Your mom will be okay. She's only 56 and has many good years left." "Thanks, Katie. I appreciate your support," I said, grateful for her help. Then I waited for her to get ready. We reached the hospital and I finally saw my mom. She was in shock from my dad's passing and didn't want the surgery. I convinced her she needed to be there for me, and she agreed to the operation. She had surgery days later and recovered quickly. Within a week, she was home and we were taking short walks together. During her hospital stay, I arranged my dad's funeral. It was well attended by friends and neighbors, all shocked at his passing at just 60. I insisted my mom not go, due to her recent surgery, promising we would visit his grave when she was ready. I pondered my future while staying with my mom. I felt reluctant to leave her alone. After discussions with Ben and Rachel, I decided to quit my job and move closer to her. Ben arranged for a moving company to pack and ship my things, including my car. Their help was invaluable. Mom's recovery was impressive, though she needed afternoon naps. With my help and Katie's, who was also recently widowed, Mom was doing well. I decided it was time to look for a job. I discussed my plan with Mom. She suggested we pull our resources and start a business together. "I have confidence in you, Jerry. We can be partners. I can run the office, and you can handle the technical work." I was surprised but intrigued. I saw potential in the idea, especially with small contractors needing engineering services. I consulted Ben, who encouraged me to go for it. Mom and I pulled our money and opened a small office. I advertised in local trade publications and introduced myself to contractors. Slowly, work started coming in. Within a few months, we were covering expenses, though not yet making a profit. Then, out of the blue, I received a bid request for a mid-sized office building. I worked on the bid for hours, minimizing my profit margin, and won. I had to expand quickly to meet the deadline, but had enough time to hire more help. Soon, more work came in, and I expanded 3 more times over the next few years until we occupied an entire floor in a new high-rise. I knew I was lucky, hitting a building boom just in time. The first couple of years were all about building the business, leaving me little social time. After about 3 years, I had enough help to cut back on hours, rejoin the gym, and start working out again. Forget cooking classes. I was still terrible, but Mom helped with that. At the gym, I met Mary Susan Black. She was about 55, nicely built, and around my age. One day, I noticed her leotard's lap seam was about to tear. I awkwardly approached her, trying to warn her without embarrassing her. Miss," I stammered. "Look, I really don't want to be," she smiled. "You're really not very good at this, are you? You should practice before trying to introduce yourself to a girl," she giggled, making it less awkward. I whispered about her leotard, and she quickly ran to the locker room. I couldn't get her out of my mind. She didn't show up for a week, and I assumed she was too embarrassed to return, but the next week, she approached me. "Hi," she said. "My name is Mary Black. Thank you for warning me." I smiled. "You're welcome. Would you have lunch with me today?" "I'm Jerry Ford," I said, extending my hand. She smiled and shook my hand, agreeing to lunch. We got to know each other over the next few weeks. Mary was 28, divorced, with a 3-year-old daughter named Stacy. She worked in public relations for an advertising company near the gym. After our 3rd date, I met Stacy. She was a charming little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, nothing like her mother. Stacy quickly warmed up to me, and Mary was surprised, saying her daughter didn't usually open up to strangers so easily. Dating Mary became even more enjoyable because of Stacy. I liked Mary a lot, but I didn't love her the way I had loved Kimberly. It wasn't fair to compare them, but I knew I was different now too. Mary was pretty dynamic and had a strong personality. She was sweet and kind, especially with Stacy, her 3-year-old daughter, whom I adored like my own. Our relationship was comfortable, but not very physical, just some kissing and fumbling. One night at Mary's condo after dinner and some wine, Mary suddenly became very aggressive. We had wild lovemaking and fell asleep together. The next morning, Mary explained that the wine had lowered her inhibitions and she wanted to make love. I reassured her that she was perfect. We continued dating for months and became very comfortable with each other. I introduced Mary and Stacy to my mom, who had retired. Mom adored Stacy, treating her like a grandchild. Stacy loved her Nana, and everything felt right. We never discussed love or the future, but were content with the status quo. Eventually, we decided it was silly to keep running between our places, so I bought a house in a gated golf course community. We moved in 2 months later. Marriage never came up. Both our previous marriages had ended badly, and we were happy without that commitment. Stacy started calling me Daddy, and I felt like her dad. Life was good. The years passed quickly, one blending into another. My company thrived with a great reputation, and I had a strong team to keep it growing. I no longer had to struggle to keep it afloat. I stayed in touch with Bernie and Kate Van Horn, talking a couple of times a year, and always kept in contact with Ben and Rachel. Mary was doing well too, climbing the corporate ladder to become the Director of Public Relations. However, as she advanced, she worked longer hours and traveled more, usually being home around the same time as me, though sometimes late. Stacy grew into a beautiful, kind, and intelligent young woman. Now almost 20, she was finishing her sophomore year at an Ivy League university. Life was good, and until things started to change. Over the past few months, Mary seemed indifferent, apathetic, and preoccupied. I thought it might be my imagination, but I noticed our bed life had become sporadic. We used to have lovemaking 2 or 3 times a week, but now it had been almost 2 weeks since our last time. Mary often said she was tired or had her period. I began to suspect something was wrong, fearing it might be happening again. I decided to talk to Mary after dinner. "Mary," I began, "we need to talk. I feel like something's wrong. You seem distant, and it's like you've forgotten I'm here. What's the problem?" I kept my voice soft and non-accusatory. She stared at me. "What the hell are you talking about, Jerry? Are you getting paranoid? Are you accusing me of something? Get off my back." She then stormed out and slammed the bedroom door. I was stunned. Mary had never spoken to me like that. I realized I had noticed a tone of disrespect, maybe even contempt, from her lately. I wasn't imagining it. I decided to find out what was going on just like I had done years ago. I slept in the guest suite that night. Mary emerged the next morning, red-eyed and tearful, apologizing profusely. We made up and promised not to fight again. Mary blamed job stress, claiming a big client was on the brink of leaving. I didn't believe her and decided to find out what was really going on. Mary's late nights and occasional travel weren't unusual, but recently they'd become more frequent. I suspected something was up and contacted a private investigator. I explained my concerns and provided the necessary details and a hefty check. Over the next few weeks, things were strained between Mary and me. We avoided arguments, but remained wary. I waited for the investigator's report, already suspecting the worst. When the report came, it confirmed my fears. Mary was meeting a man named Howard Branch, a 48-year-old divorced guy. They met at restaurants, held hands, kissed, and checked into hotels. She also saw him during her business trips. I was hurt, but not as devastated as with my first wife. I realized I wasn't strong enough to handle this betrayal. I consulted my attorney, thinking a separation would be simple since we weren't legally married. He warned it could still be messy, and suggested a mutual agreement to avoid court. The following Friday after dinner, I confronted Mary. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked softly. Mary looked shocked and teary. "I'm sorry, Jerry. I hoped you wouldn't find out," she said, tears streaming down her face. "How long, Mary? I know his name, Howard Branch. Do you love him?" She lowered her head, sobbing. "About 8 months. I saw him at the mall. He's my ex-husband, Stacy's father." It felt like a knife to my chest. "Stacy's father? No, I'm Stacy's father," I exploded. "No one will take that away from me." Mary cowered, crying. "You are Stacy's father. I just meant he's her biological father. Do you love him?" I demanded, trying to stay calm. "I don't know," she wailed. I knew it was a mistake, but I couldn't say no to him. It was like when we first met and married. I couldn't keep away from him. She was crying, gasping for breath, and looking a mess. I handed her some tissues, feeling deflated and sorry for her. My anger had dissipated, replaced by a sense of disappointment. Mary wasn't the same person anymore, and I felt I was back at the start, dealing with another, failed relationship. Despite not being the love of my life, her betrayal hurt deeply. "I'll be sleeping in the guest suite tonight," I told her. "Please move out as soon as you can. We'll tell people we drifted apart." Like my mom and Stacy leaving the room, I felt like an old man. The next morning I went to work, trying to focus, but it was tough. When I returned, Mary was gone. She had taken most of her things but left a letter. "Dearest Jerry, I'm deeply sorry for the hurt I've caused. You've done nothing to deserve my shameful behavior. I don't understand my attraction to Howard. I know he will destroy me. I vowed never to see him again, but I'm unsure if I can keep that promise. You've been kind and loving. None of this is your fault. I've come to love you, which makes my actions even more horrible. I beg you not to hate me. All my love, Mary." I collapsed into a chair, the letter falling to the floor. I knew I would miss Mary, but I also felt relief. I needed solitude to get my head straight. Then a thought struck me. I needed to take care of Howard Branch for Mary and for myself. I had his address and was determined to confront him. That night I changed clothes and drove to his seedy apartment building. When he opened the door, I pushed him off balance and entered, closing the door behind me. He yelled, "I'm going to tear your head off," but 5 seconds later, he was on the floor moaning. I pulled him into a sitting position and began to explain the situation. "Listen carefully, Howard. My name is Jerry Ford. My friend's name is Mary Black. Understand?" I slapped him, and he nodded quickly. "Good," I continued. "I'm going to show you pain, but I won't leave many marks." For the next minutes, I inflicted pain until he threw up twice and begged me to stop. I got a glass of water from his kitchen, threw it in his face, and then let him drink. I turned his face to me and said, "Pack your stuff and leave this area, the southeast part of the country. Try California, Oregon, or Washington. If you're here 24 hours from now, you'll end up in a wheelchair for life. Do you understand?" He nodded vigorously. I drove home, showered for half an hour, feeling sick about what I had done. I rationalized that it would benefit Mary, freeing her from Branch. But deep down, I knew my actions were partly for revenge. I shook it off, deciding not to agonize over it. Howard Branch was gone the next day. Talking with my mom and then Stacy was tough. They couldn't understand, and I refused to go into detail. Stacy threatened to fly home, but both Mary and I were firm and finally convinced her to stay at school. We'd talk later. I suspected Mary eventually told Stacy what had happened. When I spoke to my daughter next, she seemed subdued and sad. "I'll always love you, Dad," she said, and it warmed my heart. Days and weeks went by. I got on with my life as it was. I had to decide about the company. Should I sell it or not? The potential buyer was patient, but wouldn't wait forever. He told me to take my time, saying there's no rush, but he gave me a deadline. That date was approaching fast. I had a month. I wanted to sell and be free of the responsibility, but it was the only thing that gave my life purpose. What would I do if I sold it? So I procrastinated. Finally, a week before the deadline, I called and canceled the buyout. I would keep the company. Weeks turned into months, and I became reflective, realizing I was now over 49 years old and nearing 50. What did I have to show for it? A successful company, and a young lady who was my daughter in almost every sense. Stacy called every week without fail, and a solitary existence. Did I miss Mary? Sure, but it felt like missing Ben and Rachel. We had good years together, but we moved on. The last I heard, Mary was doing well at her job and dating. She would find someone. Did I mind being alone? Not really, I told myself. I guess I had gotten used to it. Jerry, I heard Gail, my secretary, on the intercom. You have a visitor. I was busy with specs for a proposed job and was deeply involved. I was abrupt with her. Damn it, Gail, I'm busy. Handle it for me. She persisted. Jerry, I think you'll want to see him. It's Bernard Van Horn. And I could hear the laughter in her voice. Everyone here knew who Bernard Van Horn was. I froze for a second, then jumped to my feet and rushed out of my office. There, standing by Gail's desk, tall, slim, and white-haired, looking much younger than his 70-some years, was Bernie Van Horn. I hugged him tightly, a lump in my throat preventing me from speaking right away. He hugged me back and patted my back. Okay, Jerry, let me breathe, he laughed. I stepped back and just looked at him. Damn, we had kept in touch, but this was my first time seeing him in about 20 years. I quickly ushered him into my office, and we sat in the small sitting area. I still couldn't believe my eyes. We talked, catching up on each other's lives. I knew he had recently sold his company. He told me he and Kate had moved to Naples a few weeks ago. They had discussed it for years but never acted on it. On a whim, they flew down a month ago, looked at some properties, saw a home on the Gulf, fell in love with it, and bought it quickly. Bernie asked about my business and why I decided not to sell. I explained my reasons, and he nodded in understanding. Jerry, you know you'll have to visit us now that we're so close. Kate would be really upset if you didn't. I assured him I would, and we reminisced more. I talked about the early days of starting my company on a shoestring, barely making it before getting a couple of breaks. I saw a twinkle in his eyes, and then it hit me. My God, what an idiot I was. I never suspected, but I should have. It was Bernie. He gave my company the push it needed. I stumbled over my words trying to express my gratitude. Don't be silly. All I did was call in a couple of favors. You took the ball and ran with it, and everyone saw the excellence of your work. Your company's success was due to your talent and hard work. I did very little, he said dismissively. There was a lull in our conversation, and I saw him looking at me expectantly. I knew what he was waiting for, and it was time anyway. I really wanted to know. I was more than curious but also afraid. I knew that by opening this up I might face more heartache. Bernie, how is Kimberly? Is she okay? Is she happy? I truly hope she's well, I said quietly. I saw Bernie sit back and let out a soft breath. I've been waiting a long time for you to ask, Jerry. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Kate will be so happy you did. Now, about Kimberly. Bernie shifted in his chair, hesitated a bit, collected his thoughts, and began. It's been a long time since you left, and a lot has happened to her. I steeled myself, knowing her child was now grown. I expected to hear she had married and had a family. For some reason, I just didn't want to hear that. I really didn't want to hear that. Jerry, Bernie continued, Kim lost the baby about a month after you left. She had a malfunction, the doctor said. She wouldn't be able to conceive again. I don't remember why. I'm not sure I understood it then. She had already quit her job at the publishing company. The divorce, malfunction, and aftermath left her clinically depressed. No, Jerry, it wasn't your fault. Don't start blaming yourself. What happened to Kim was her own doing, and she knew that. Her stupidity, as she called it, destroyed her world. We were really worried about her. It took months of therapy for her to recover. In a sad way, what happened changed her. She became more mature, responsible, and compassionate. I didn't know what to say. This was all new information, and it shook me. I had emotions roiling inside me but couldn't identify them. One thing was clear. Kim still stirred feelings in me. Me just talking about her did that. Bernie shifted in his chair again. When things settled down and Kim was recovering, she told us she wanted to study medicine. We were stunned and thought it was part of her depression. But she assured us she had thought it through and really wanted to do it. Long story short, she enrolled at Penn's medical school and became an MD, specializing in pediatric oncology. She knew she'd never have children and wanted to help others. Bernie paused and watched me. I didn't know what to say. Kim had loved her job as an editor, so it was shocking she had resigned. Maybe the pregnancy caused that. Losing the baby must have been devastating for her, though I couldn't muster sorrow for it, given how she got pregnant. The rest of what Bernie told me stunned me. She couldn't have children, became a doctor, and specialized in pediatric oncology. Was this the Kim I knew? It was hard to process. "Do you know why we moved here, Jerry?" Bernie asked. "The biggest reason? We wanted to be near Kim. We wanted to be near our daughter." I looked at him, blankly. Near her? What? I sounded like an idiot. I was overloaded with information. "Kim is here," Bernie said. "She accepted the position as Chief of Pediatric Oncology at the Cancer Center at the University in Tampa. She's been on the job for a couple of months now." "Jerry, would you like to see her? Say hello, maybe?" "No, don't panic. She doesn't know I'm here. She'd be pissed if she knew I suggested it, but she knows you're in Tampa." "Do you think that influenced her decision?" he teased with a twinkle in his eyes. "Jerry, all kidding aside, she would have accepted the job because it's what she wanted. But knowing you were here gave her pause. It's not that she didn't want to see you, she didn't want to complicate your life." I shook my head. I had to process everything Bernie was telling me. It was too much. I had to sort it all out. Bernie saw my confusion and stood up. "Okay, Jerry, I know I just unloaded a lot on you. Think it over. I'll be in touch." I managed to stand up and walk him to the door. I watched him walk down the hall, then returned to my desk, asking Gail to make sure I wasn't disturbed. I had a lot to think about. Kim is actually here in Tampa." My pulse quickened. I knew the questions I had to ask myself. What did I feel for Kim? Did I still love her? These were questions I'd avoided for years, but now they demanded answers. I wasn't going to lie to myself. I knew I loved Kim, but the Kim I married. What did I feel for this new Kim, the doctor in her mid-40s? I knew I had to see her, meet her, speak with her. Bernie and I kept in touch. I visited him and Kate in Naples and was relieved but sorry Kim wasn't there. I wanted to see her but was fearful of what I might feel or not feel. I was a mess. One Saturday, Kate called and invited me down for the day. It was sunny and hot, and I had a few bathing suits there. I packed a clean shirt and drove down I-75. I let myself in the front door and called out their names. In the large sunroom at the back, I saw Kim standing by the sliding glass doors. My breath caught. She was about 20 feet away, silhouetted by the sun, but I knew it was her. My mind went back through the years. She hadn't changed, still trim, taut, and well-groomed. I walked over, and we stood gazing at each other. "Kim," I said softly. "Hello, Jerry. It's good to see you." She extended a hand. I took it, and we shook hands as if meeting for the first time. In a sense, we were. "Jerry," Kim continued, "we didn't mean to trick you by my being here today. I begged my parents to let me do this. I really wanted to see you. I hope you're not angry with me or them." No, of course not," I reassured her. "It's nice to see you again. And Kim, you look lovely," I added impulsively. I was oddly pleased to see her blush and smile. We moved into the solarium and sat on a white wicker set around a low glass-topped coffee table. Our conversation was initially awkward, with unnecessary pauses, but that didn't last long. After a few false starts, we both chuckled at the awkwardness and then relaxed a bit. The conversation started to flow more easily, with Kim telling me about her career and me sharing what I had been doing over the past few years. She already knew about Mary, thanks to Bernie and Kate. My mind was operating on two levels. Consciously, I participated in our conversation, mundane as it was. On another level, I was observing Kim, trying to understand her as a person. Despite the years, she still looked great. She wore a casual cotton polo and khaki shorts, showing off her tanned legs. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, and there were faint lines at the corners of her eyes and mouth. She looked terrific, but her eyes were different. There was a calm, mature confidence and tranquility I had never seen before. This was a self-assured, highly skilled professional, comfortable in her own skin. This was not the Kim I had courted and married, nor the Kim I had divorced and left. This was a whole new woman, and I realized I wanted to get to know her. We spent the day talking, having lunch she prepared, and lounging by the pool. I felt myself warming to her on different levels. I was attracted to her for the same reasons I had been when we were young, but she was so much more now. It was almost dusk when I realized the time. "Kim, would you like to have dinner with me?" I asked hopefully. She smiled. "Jerry, I would love to, but I'm due at the center tonight. Can we make it tomorrow?" We did, and we have been dating for the past 2 weeks. Is dating the right word? I knew I loved Kim. I guess I always have, and I love the woman she has become even more. Does she feel the same about me? We haven't discussed such carnal subjects yet. We were just dating as friends. The only physical contact we had were soft kisses to end the evening. Where will this end? I really don't know, but I'm hopeful.